All right, good job.
Oh, you're connected. So now you should.
Be helpful.
And then we need to plug in. Where it shows you there, down. See the box there, right? Yeah. Is that what? You want to say no, thank you. I gotta find a particular place. Just a minute. It's gonna leave it on the. Okay, you can get started.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, it is 9:02 AM. Call to order the meeting of the Land Use and Information Committee for Burnett County, February 4th, 2025. Notice is posted in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.84, open meeting law. At this point, it's time for public comments on any matter that someone wishes to raise that's not on the agenda. It's a public hearing. Public hearing will address its own public comments. You have something?
Yes, could you speak up? I'm having.
Okay, I guess I gotta get closer to the microphone.
Should
Or turn it on.
No.
On?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not used to having it this close to my mouth. All right, so you understood the aspect of public comments having nothing to do with the hearings on the agenda. At this point, I'd entertain them.
I got public comment.
Go ahead.
At the last meeting, I was invited to the Grantsburg Rotary Club. And there, a guy said that he was denied building a garage because it was too close to his driveway. It was like 20 feet off and he's supposed to be 40. Why on your own property can't you build a garage 20 feet off your driveway so you can drive in and drive through?
Well, the short answer to that is must be an easement road serving more than one.
It's his
driveway.
own property, 180 acres.
And right, but does other people have a right to travel on that road? It's an easement?
Nope.
Okay, then I don't know the answer to that question. We'll check on that later. Okay, anything else?
Says he was told he either has to move his garage 20 feet, so it's 40 feet away from his driveway one way, and it drops off the one way, or you gotta go cut down a bunch of trees the other way to move the driveway.
Yeah, I
And
don't
I
know.
think that's really stupid.
We have a setback for a easement road, which is to prevent drivers and stuff from encroaching on somebody else's ability to plow snow or whatever. We have that. If it doesn't apply to that, then that wouldn't be the case. But I don't know that. Not my answer.
And so he wasn't real happy about it. And so he mentioned about it, so I'm just bringing it up here at the meeting.
We'll check on it. Okay. Anything further?
Nope, that was
Okay.
it.
Good enough. Okay, going on to entertain a motion to approve the agenda order.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the following change. Do item C after item A under public hearing. So we can get item A and item C off the docket and they don't have to wait around for everything.
To proceed with the lengthier one, yes.
Yeah.
I could see doing that. Any
I'll second that.
have a second? We have a motion by Supervisor Szymanski to amend the agenda and seconded by Supervisor Rockman Anderson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good. Moving on to the approval of the minutes of the January 7th, 2025 meeting.
To approve the minutes.
Motion by Supervisor Blomberg to approve the minutes. Second by Supervisor Chuck Anderson. Any discussion? No discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. I didn't hear Duke on that.
I'm in favor.
Okay, you're there. I have a fire alarm on Supervisor Anderson's phone. Okay. On to the public hearing. Jason, will you read the public hearing?
Notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, February 4th, 2025 at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center in room 165, Town of Meehan, Severn, Wisconsin, regarding the following. Burnett County Land Use Shoreline Protection Ordinances. Number 1, conditional use permit CUP 2503 Shenander. Sound that correct? Yep. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Daniels, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Ken and Karen Shenander have made an application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to operate a home occupation business of a gunsmith located at 9280 Colander Road in the A2 zoning district in Government Lot 3, Section 22, Town 38 North, Range 17 West. Number 2, conditional use permit CUP 2504 Camp Croix Association, Inc. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Scott, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Keith Passow on behalf of Camp Croix Association Incorporated has made an application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a new multi-purpose building, relocate 17 existing cabins, and to repurpose the existing bathhouse into 2 ADA compliant apartments. Overnight capacity of the entire property not to exceed 150 persons, and daytime capacity of the entire property not to exceed 220 persons. Located at 1945 Gold Star Road in the RR2 and RR3 zoning districts in government lots 2 and 3, section 10, town 38 North, range 19 West. Number 3, map amendment MAP 2501 Thorson to rezone tax ID 28686 and 28688 former Nelson School parcels in the southeast quarter, the southeast quarter, and the southwest quarter, the southeast quarter, section 15, town 38 North, range 18 West. Located in the town of Wood River from RR2 residential recreation and A2 agricultural residential to C1 commercial zoning district. Zoning change requested by Luke Thorson.
Okay, we'll proceed with the public hearings. Conditional use permit UP 2503 Shenander, home occupation. You want to come forward?
Morning. Oh, what I'm doing is applying for a FFL license,
Would you please just identify yourself for the record first?
Ken Shenander,
Thanks.
9280 End Road. So applying for my federal firearms license, so I can do light gunsmithing, gun sales, gun shows, and internet sales. That's about it.
I noticed in your application, you're at the present time going to do it from the home itself,
Yes.
but you might consider expanding to a building.
Down the road,
Down the
depends on how things go, yeah.
You plan to be like a brick and mortar kind of sales or just for people coming to pick up stuff?
As far as right now, if somebody wanted to come and pick something up, it would be, set up an appointment type thing. Drop something off, pick something up. Down the road, if it's possibly, maybe a 5-year plan or something like that, I could build something.
Not a store, so to speak, just public at large, but just by appointment
Yeah.
only at this point. Okay. That's the only question I have. Any other questions?
So what, 5-year plan, would that be a storefront then, or just? Like you're, are now
There'll be
the
a
expensive,
possibility of being a separate building on the property.
yeah. That there, it would be manned and people could come and go, and public could come and go.
Yeah. Right now I do construction, I build homes and stuff like that. This is kind of a, looking at the exiting out construction, you know, not easy on the body.
You get on construction, sit behind a counter and talk to people coming in with guns.
Yep.
On your, that page, you also said gun shows.
Yes,
I
I'll be
mean,
doing gun
are you
shows.
going to gun shows or are you going to do gun shows?
No, I'll be going to gun shows.
So you won't be having any gun shows on your property.
Further questions by the committee? Well, at this point, you can return to your seat. We'll open the public hearing. I
Okay.
might recall you if there are things you need to address after that. So at this point, I'll open a public hearing on UP 2503. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this matter? Being none, I will close the public hearing and bring this back to the committee for discussion. I believe it's E2.
A2.
You're on, I think you have 40 acres.
Yeah.
So a lot of room. One of the things I ask sometimes on this, let's just step back up, a couple more questions. You plan to do any, scope mounting, sighting in for people, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll mount scopes and things like that, bore sight, but as far as if you're going towards, you know, having a shooting range or something like that for the
Right.
public, no. I use the public shooting ranges around here, so.
Right, and in the location, you're fairly close to a lake, so noise is a potential issue, but people shoot all the time around here,
Correct.
we all know that, but a lot is different, so at this point, you don't intend to do any significant amount of shooting. Okay, any further questions? Committee members? And I'd entertain a motion on this matter then.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this with the staff recommendation.
Would you mind reading them, please?
Sure. Number 1 is follow all sign regulations. Number 2, this is in regards to the gazebo. Gazebo to obtain a land use permit by 6/1/2025. And number 3, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity.
Motion by Supervisor Bonner, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Szymanski. Any further discussion on the motion?
I guess my question would be, once we approve it, there's not a condition stating when shooting can happen or how often, how frequent. Because yes, it's sighting in, but, it's proximity to a lake.
I think when you're talking about sighting, you're talking about bore sighting.
Yeah,
Not-
that's all
not
done
shoot.
with the laser and.
Right.
that's all
Okay.
done in-
Get it close. I think we'll note, we could make this a condition that at this time, no significant shooting is planned. It's kind of vague. And the point I make is that a little bit is probably okay, but a lot is not.
I was just wondering how we attach that to a condition.
That's what I'm getting at. That's a very hard condition to attach. I think,
Well, I think if you walk outside at any time during the day, you're hearing shooting throughout the county,
yes.
so
That's my point.
that's why we live here.
I do that. And I things in for my grandson and son-in-law and daughter, but I don't do it for money. Right? I think the intent is that this is not going to have any significant amount of shooting. If suddenly there is a lot, that would be a different matter. We could address, but I'm okay with it without a,
Are we able to address it hindsight?
it would be like a noise issue, a nuisance type issue. if it was a real lot. But, you know, the normal, the routine amount we have. I think it'd be hard to quantify a condition that we couldn't enforce. Unless it was really extreme.
If we approve this, does that mean we approve that future building?
Well, that would
Or
require,
would that be required to come in front of
I
one?
think we're approving is what you're proposing to do right now. And I think you'd want to come back to amend the conditional use to add the actual door if you ever get to that point.
So that's why he needed to state it, because he applied for the future expansion as well, I believe.
We didn't put it in. Let's add one more condition. That is at the time of the construction of a detached building for the business, you return to amend the conditional use to include that. That way we're not giving you the right to build a mall there, not that you would. I think that we require a land use permit. I think we'll amend the conditional use when you're ready to do that. So you wouldn't be seeking a new conditional use, you would be asking for an amendment to it. Be the same process with a public hearing that you're doing that, but you would already have established the business.
So I make the motion to amend the motion, adding the condition.
Applicants will come back in when he wants to construct a separate building and amend the conditional use. permit.
For retail.
You got that amendment? Or second?
Sure, second.
Second by Supervisor Zonder. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. I'll just do a regular motion on the amendment, not roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Now, we've amended the motion to add condition number 4. So as making a motion on the amendment. You had made the motion.
Yeah, the original motion, I mean.
You made the motion, we seconded the motion on the original approval. So now it's amended. Roll call vote. Supervisor Tucker,
Could you repeat the question? My internet broke up on me there.
okay, we're just calling, we amended the motion. You heard that. Now we're, roll call vote on the motion as amended to approve the conditional use
Aye.
request. Aye. Supervisor Moyer,
Yes.
Supervisor Szymanski,
Yes.
Supervisor Blomberg,
Yes.
Supervisor Lacqua Anderson,
Yes,
Supervisor Conroy, yes.
Chuck Anderson.
And
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'll
Chuck.
vote yes too.
Okay, I missed you somehow. The microphone blocked my view of the. All right, motion, all in favor, all is approved. Proceed with your plans.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now we have amended the agenda to go to the rezone request, map 2501 for Thorson. Rezone from RR2 to an A2 to commercial district.
I'm Luke Thorson with Burnett Plumbing.
I'm gonna recuse myself from this.
And Supervisor Moyer has recused himself. And technically you need to go out and
Yep.
take a break.
Yep.
Thanks. So, proceed with your, plans.
Sure. So currently that's the Nelson School. We're going to do a remodel and move our plumbing shop from the village of Grantsburg out to we're hopeful to move it out to the Nelson School. A portion, the majority of the building will be used for our shop. A portion of it will be used possibly down the road for rental space for business or office space.
So provide a better situation for you with your trucks and whatnot. to be out
Right.
there.
Yeah, good location out on the highway and
Gotta ask you this as an old sewer guy.
Yeah.
What does it have there for a septic
it
system?
has an old sewer. So I have plans to have Keith Stoner. He's gonna do a soil test, take a look at the sewer this spring. when weather permits. But so far it's held up for the school, so we'll see what we find, I guess.
Oh, that's,
You
yeah,
know,
that's
if
always
anything on the
interesting.
County or the director of it.
It's, they put in some really big systems in those old schools. I mean, like the Danbury School, for example, much older. And
Yeah.
something that worked for a long time, but
Yeah.
probably didn't meet code, but you know,
Still working, yeah,
I'm a plumber, so you get this from.
yeah.
Anyway, is there any further questions on the part of the committee?
I don't know if there's a need for it, but would you, again, just like the last one, would you have a storefront if you got into sell to private people that, hey, I just need this pipe or I just need that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure we'll have some stop in traffic. It isn't gonna be a hardware store by any means. I'm not gonna advertise that way.
Yep. that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It would be okay in commercial, would be permitted if you did, if you change your mind. So this is just a rezone to enable it to be appropriately zoned.
Sure.
And then you're aware of the DOT issue about driveway.
Yeah, yep. So I just got my permit back yesterday to come and remove the west driveway. That's one without a turn lane. So we're gonna take that one out, keep the one on the east side. And I think in my permit, I have until, I think it was the end of September to get that done is what she gave me.
So just checking, make
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
Any other further questions by any other committee? At this point, take a seat again. We'll call you back if we need to, but I'll open the public hearing. So I'm opening the public hearing on this rezoning, which will be a recommendation by this committee, will not be final until county board approves our recommendation. Is there anyone here to address this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring us back to the committee. Further discussion?
Have we heard anything from the town?
No,
It's the town of Wood River.
correct.
Okay,
No correspondence at all?
No correspondence other than the DOT that we've been emailing with, yep.
I think it's not a controversial issue. I think it's a really good use for that place. So I think no one has an issue with it. And the town of Wood River, because it is not comprehensively zoned, it falls into the fact it's within the setback of a very upper headwaters part of Wood River. With that, hearing no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to recommend the rezone to commercial.
Motion by Supervisor Lockwood Anderson. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Chuck Anderson.
From staff.
I can read those real quick.
Please.
Number one, sanitary system evaluation to be completed and submitted to the county by 6/1/2025. Number two, work with Wisconsin Department of Transportation to make sure access to State Road 70 is allowed for commercial activities. Three, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity.
Well, I'll amend my motion to include the three recommented
Recommendations and
recommendations.
Supervisor Anderson. Second. Let's just make this that the motion has been amended
What's the amendment?
to just to add the three recommendations by
Oh.
staff.
Okay, sure.
So, okay, hearing, I mean, it's just, I should have caught that, missed it. So hearing that, motion by Supervisor Anderson, seconded by Supervisor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
I'm back.
Oh, did you disappear again for a moment? I did.
I did. You know, after so long career in broadband infrastructure, I'll tell you our capital could use a little bit better Wi-Fi.
Are you up to speed that we were just making a motion to approve the recommendation to county board to rezone the property?
Yes, I tried to second it and I am in favor of the rezone.
Okay, we didn't hear you unfortunately, but
Yep, that's
got
okay.
it. Supervisor Tucker,
Yes,
Supervisor Moyer recused himself, Supervisor Szymanski,
Yes.
Supervisor Blomberg,
Yes.
Supervisor Chuck Anderson,
Yes.
Supervisor Karen Lockwood Anderson,
Yes,
Supervisor Conroy, yes. Motion has been made to recommend rezoning this property to the county board.
And you don't have to be at the county board meeting. I'll go there and it'll be approved. That'll be the third Thursday of this month. So
Okay.
then we'll send you a letter telling you it was all approved. So.
Thank you. All done. And now, as within our amended motion, we'll do all the conditional use permit up 2504, Camp Croy Association. Multipurpose building, relocate 17 cabins and repurpose bathhouse into 2 ADA compliant apartments in RR2 and RR3 zoning districts. So Camp Croy rep, please come forward.
That would be me. Good morning. My name is Chris Peterson. I'm an architect hired by Camp Croy for this particular project.
Yes, I meant to say something as I called Camp Croy and I didn't, I called you first. Apologize. I want to make a notation of how we're going to conduct this public hearing, just to make it clear what went on. When this came up, the Looney Lake Association asked if their representative could have more time than 3 minutes. We traditionally make 3 minutes for anybody hearing on a public hearing. We're going to open in a minute. And we're going to stick to that. But what we did do was allow people who would otherwise have spoken 3 minutes to cede their time to a representative from the Looney Lake Association in the interest of balance and to not hear a whole bunch of people spend 3 minutes saying the same thing. So that will happen after your presentation on the application, and you'll have as much time as you need, and then we'll call you back after the public hearing.
Okay, just a quick question. So in conjunction with my presentation, I've got Clay here as well. He's the president of the board. So we're going to kind of do a two-part
Sure.
intro to the presentation, if that's acceptable.
It is. You're keeping in mind, the applicant always has as much time as they need to make their application.
Okay,
We
we just
try to
want,
provide some balance and also a concise response so that we know what we're looking at,
right,
okay?
yep. Yeah, so from my point of view, I'm more kind of project focused and speaking towards the building, and he'll be a little more comprehensive of camp and.
I understand, and I wanted to say that before we started, rather than in the middle, so,
Okay,
thanks.
sounds good. Yes, you're welcome. So again, Chris Peterson, architect hired by Camp Croy, for this, multi-purpose building project. So I'll just kind of briefly cover the scope and, criteria that I was hired to work on for, this multi-purpose building, which actually they're titling as the Ministry Center for Camp. So, basically the purpose of the Ministry Center is to house certain functions that are already existing at camp. That basically include a commercial kitchen that will be relocated to the new building. There's an existing bathhouse with showers and toilets and things like that will be relocated to this existing building. And then the dining facilities that are existing will be relocated to this building. And then the assembly area. And everything is designed, so the design occupant load for the building is 150. So that's what the assembly area is designed for. That's what all the bathroom fixtures and everything are designed for the camp requirements. The building itself is 6,192 square feet upstairs. One of the things that we had discussed initially was providing a safety area for camp users during a storm event. Historically, there's been some severe storms and things like that have gone through camp. So safety has been a big concern with camp users. So to address that initially, we were talking and considering a hardened structure with like storm shutters and things like that in the assembly area. But with the amount of doors and windows and things like that, that just didn't seem practical. And in between the application for the CUP and now the hearing, they've hired consulting engineers, one of them being a structural engineer. So in talking with them and getting input, there's no real engineering standards and requirements for a hardened structure. So it's really hard to design a safety area for users in that regard. So one of the changes to the building, which doesn't change the footprint or the layout of the upper level, is a lower level partial basement. That would be the width of the building, 60 feet by 24 feet. The only intended use of that area is for a storm safety area for camp users. Other than that, it'll remain unoccupied. It's being accessed from two stair exits on either side of the building, and it's basically a concrete box to house people in the case of a storm event. So poured concrete walls. We're proposing to do a precast hollow core floor over the top of it. So again, basically just a concrete box for storm safety purposes. So that is a little bit different than the proposed. So that is the one kind of additional use of the building. The other uses, as I mentioned, remain unchanged from the current uses at camp. So the basement is 1,440 square feet for the total square foot of that. And as I mentioned, basically the intent and the purpose is to, kind of bring things up to current building standards, to meet ADA requirements, Department of Health requirements, in terms of fixture counts and numbers of showers and things like that that's required for a camp with the use occupancy at 150. So in terms of let's see here, just gotta make sure that I'm covering all that. Yep. So and obviously the building will be designed and engineered to meet all standard building codes. And that's it. That's in the works right now. So other considerations that I did want to speak to regarding this project is that Keith Passow, as representative of the camp, he is the chair of the building committee. So he has already met with the town of Scott and presented the project to them, as well as the Rooney Lake Association. So they're aware of the project and the scope of work that is looking to be done here with this building. The septic system has been replaced and upgraded to be compliant with the existing buildings at camp, as well as the proposed building of the ministry center. Existing outdoor lighting has all been updated to LED dark sky compliant lighting, and the electrical engineer is currently working on the lighting for the proposed building to also be dark sky compliant for all exterior lighting on the building. Let's see here. I'll speak a little bit about the location. Along with the submittal, we included obviously all the site plans and things like that. So the location is set back up on top of the hill from the lake, and kind of closer to utilities, closer to the access road. There will be one proposed extension to the driveway just for delivery purposes to the back of the building to access the storage areas and things like that. Other than that, no other road extensions or parking area additions. Again, not being an increase in occupancy or anything like that. Existing parking and roads and things like that will satisfy the number of users for the proposed building. The erosion control methods, those were also included on the plans that were submitted along with the application. So during construction, obviously there'll be silt fence and things like that to protect the lake and the land from erosion and things like that. So and then in terms of just overall stormwater plans not required for this, but we do have a civil engineer as one of the consultants who's working with me on the stormwater that would be from the proposed impervious surface of the building. We're looking at collecting that through gutters and connecting that with piping into the drain tile, the perimeter drain tile system that we'll have around the foundation of the building. And that will be brought to a retention area again, to control erosion and things like that, and help protect the lake and the environment on the site. See here. I think that pretty well covers everything that I had on my list regarding the building, purpose, function, scope of work. So yeah, I appreciate your time and consideration of this permit. And if you have any questions for me immediately, or I'll turn it over to Clay for his part.
Committee have any at this point, any questions to pursue?
Yeah, so it's my understanding the new building is farther away from the lake than the existing lodge.
Correct.
Okay. And is it as far back as it can go because of the drain field?
It's right next to new drain field, pretty much, yep, right off of the main driveway coming in. And right next, adjacent to the new drain field. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
This might be a question for maybe Jason can answer it. Where do the current and or planned buildings, fall within, the current setbacks for shoreline protection?
We'll meet all the current setbacks. Any new building or anything moved is gonna meet all required setbacks.
And some will remain, I mean, any of the existing in,
Yeah, I think the existing lodge might be slightly within the 75-foot setback, and then I believe there's a building down by the beach area that's within the 75-foot setback, but those are old grandfathered in existing buildings.
What are your plans for the old existing building?
Which one specifically?
The one you're gonna vacate, the one the dining area and kitchens and.
For the lodge, that's primarily gonna be housing for the camp counselors. So basically, the dining area right now, the camp has 100 kids that come and 50 volunteers, adult staff, basically. So 150 people that they serve for the dining, and the indoor square footage does not meet, basically the current code requirements for space for that. So basically, in a nutshell, they eat outside almost all the time. So basically, this indoor area would accommodate enough space for them to eat indoors during inclement weather. As far as the kitchen goes, it's not 100% up to commercial standards, the current kitchen. So basically, they're just looking at relocating the commercial equipment that they have into the new building, and then it would just remain a residential kitchen for the rest of it. And then in terms of the bathhouse, the same thing for the bathhouse. It doesn't meet the space requirements for current code to accommodate the number of fixtures and showers that are required for camp. And so again, those would be relocated to the new building, and as mentioned previously, the existing bathhouse is being proposed versus, just demoing it out or something like that, being proposed to be converted into ADA housing for the adult counselors at camp. Reason being, in talking to some of the state building code officials and things like that, there's not adequate handicap accessible housing. None of the cabins are accessible or anything like that. The only bedrooms accessible are in the nurse's station. So this would add some accommodation for anybody that has a disability or something like that. So.
I already asked Jason some of the questions about this, but there's 2,200 feet of shoreline, and that's 2 lots. So allowing for a total of 400 feet of viewing corridor. How much is currently open and how much is, has native vegetation?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. The site plan was put together by our landscape architect, and those plans were submitted with the application. So basically, it's the beach area down by where the couple of docks and boathouse that Jason mentioned. That part is open. A lot of the shoreline is actually on kind of a steep hill, and that's all native with trees and remains undeveloped and will remain undeveloped. So we're not proposing any new development along the shoreline.
I would say, looking at the satellite photo, there's less than 10% that is open.
Right. Yeah, it's just at the
And that's
base of
the
the hill. Yep, exactly.
Any further questions from the committee? Again, we more than likely will be asking you to come back on.
Sure. I'll turn it over to Clay then at this point. All right, thank you.
I'd like to first introduce myself. I'm Clay Rosh. And I want to thank everyone that's able to be here. I would ask your permission, if it's okay with the group, I stand over here so that I don't have my back to the audience.
Take the microphone with you.
I will do that. Since it's wireless, that's very nice. I would like to read a statement that I prepared. Good morning, my name is Clay Rosh. I would like to share with you my story. I spent 30 years helping companies obtain and comply with government-issued public noticed permits to construct and operate facilities. For the last decade or so, I have volunteered with Camp Croy, serving on its board of directors. The first physical facility need that camp leaders alerted me to at the beginning of my service around 2015 was the need for protection from the summer storms that frequent Burnett County during the youth Bible camp that Camp Croy runs. It seemed odd to me, even at that time, that in today's day and age, a camp that hosted 100 kids and 50 volunteers for several weeks of outdoor summer camp would have such a deficiency. The need of shelter from storms became far more real and intense on the final evening of week 1 of Youth Bible Camp in July 2020. As a tornado swept through camp, knocking down an estimated 40 trees and topping many more. By what I can only conclude was divine providence, not one of those present were seriously injured. The safety of 100 young people entrusted to our care is the prime motive force that has driven camp leadership to undertake a capital campaign, permitting, and building exercise. Consistent with this motivation around safety and security of our campers, we named the campaign Secure Futures. Our ministry committee, in charge of executing our mission of Youth Bible Camp every year, articulated 4 functions that such a building should satisfy. Number 1, shelter from storms. Number 2, a dining hall to serve the 150 seated at tables. Number 3, a modernized bath and shower rooms for boys and girls. And number 4, a modernized commercial kitchen. Each of these functions had the health, safety, and well-being of those entrusted to our care in mind. The modernized bathrooms and kitchen would ensure compliance with the latest environmental, health, and safety regulations, which were written to protect the vulnerable among us. The dining hall would provide protection and warmth on wet and rainy days. None of these functions were designed for the purpose of transforming camp into a year-round conference and retreat center. Originally, functions 1 and 2, that being dining hall and storm protection, were envisioned to be provided in the same hardened structure that Chris mentioned, with, quote, hurricane doors and windows. After speaking frankly with our architect this fall, who personally experienced a tornado himself that destroyed family-owned buildings, we revised the design to add a simple, single-purpose basement for superior storm protection for those entrusted to our care. Some have claimed that we did not keep the community informed of our plans. To the contrary, please see, if you can, the minutes of the Lake Rooney Association meetings in spring and summer of 2024, as well as minutes of recent Scott Township meetings. Some have said that our purpose in building is to transform camp into a commercial event center. This also is untrue. Our website describes possibilities of additional uses of camp because one, the remoteness of our location relative to our owner congregations means that we are largely forgotten by them, out of sight and out of mind. And number two, the fundraising obstacle to build this building was large, requiring that we cast a large net of prospective donors. Camp provides a valuable experience, a valuable service for young and old, especially the young, who develop a love for the outdoors and lifelong friendships. A fortunate few, like our program director, fell in love and got married there. Camp Croy has profoundly affected me and many others. I seek to be a good steward of the blessing of Camp Croy and Lake Rooney for the benefit of this and future generations. Approval of camp's conditional use permit application is important to realize this benefit. That's my story of Camp Croy. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions.
Committee members have any questions at this point? I think-
Oh, one, sorry, one. Any in your current plans, you keep saying 150. And is that your intention is to limit it to 150, 100 kids and 50 staff?
That is our capacity for youth Bible camp. That is also what we are happy to have as an overnight capacity at camp.
So you're not looking to increase that?
So I'm not sure that we would say that we currently have a limit of 150, but we are okay to accept an overnight limit of 150. Now, to be clear, and our application makes this clear, if we were to remove the tables, okay, of the dining center, the capacity, the seating capacity without tables would be more, and our application states 220. Okay, that also is, we don't see that necessarily as a current limit on our operations, but if I recall correctly, looking at our 2018 continual use permit application, which was withdrawn, as many of you know, that number was actually a little higher than that. But that's where we have put as capacities, overnight capacity of 150, and that is in keeping with what we do currently when we have a full set, which is most weeks of Youth Bible Camp, 100 kids and 50 adult or youth volunteers. So that is consistent with what we have done for many years since my time at camp.
I got a, excuse me, question I have, and I think this is maybe one of the ones that's raised concern, is what would be the reason there would need to be 220 people in that scenario? Is that like a presentation or a one-day retreat or something of that nature?
Right. This is a kind of a building code issue, and the reason that they put 220 in there, so there's math that's done on occupancy square footage. So for tables and chair seating, it's 15 square feet per occupant, which is where we get the 150, right? But if you were to remove those tables and just have chairs, for example, for, you know, if a speaker was up front and just had an audience with chairs without tables, that gets reduced to 10 square feet per occupant. So then the max occupant load for that space from like a building official's perspective is 220. So that's the purpose of us putting.
In other words, that number is a maximum number of people that could be in that building
Correct.
legally.
Yeah, from a code standpoint,
Okay.
correct, yeah. So, but In terms of like what Clay is saying, for the overnight capacity in terms of beds and what they're set up to accommodate, that's 150. So that's the design occupant load for the primary function of that space being dining, tables and chairs is the 15 per square feet. But we did feel like we should put the other occupancy in there as well, because that's how a code official would look at it.
One further on that then, what would be, other than the youth Bible camp 150 occupancy, what other use might there be that would claim that
We'll take this one.
capacity or
So your question is,
what other thing might you do that would
What other
that
function?
would, give you 150 overnight capacity?
sure. We occasionally hold worship services at Camp Croix. This Camp Croix is owned by the 48 congregations that make up the St. Croix Conference of the Minnesota District of the Wisconsin Lutheran Synod. And so there would be we call ourselves the Camp Beneath the Cross. And there would be possibility for a worship service, daytime worship service there. It is also possible, we have held weddings, not in some time, but it is also possible that a wedding event would happen at that location, as we have done in the past. It's rare, and one of the reasons it's rare is that there isn't housing that people would want to stay at during an event like that at Camp Croix. If you saw the majority of the lodging there is these small buildings that have 4 single bunk beds. So 2 sets of bunk beds. It is very rustic, okay? And I think most wedding planners are going to say, no, not here, because nobody's going to want to sleep there if it's a a kind of thing that would have an overnight activity or a evening dance or something of that nature. So it is unlikely, and I think our past has shown that there just isn't lodging that people would want to stay at.
I think that's clarification that I wanted to get out there.
I have a further question. You say 150 overnight capacity. What's the largest capacity events you have? Like daytime, inside, outside? I mean, like, what would be a maximum number of people not overnight?
I would say respectfully, and I could be corrected by others that know camp, the operations of camp. One person is on Zoom, Trevor Holderbecker. But I would say that generally 150 is what we will have in the daytime as well. We won't let more people at camp than 150 during the weeks of youth Bible camp. That's not because of a lodging capacity per se. It's just what we say. We don't want more than 150 people there. So I don't know that we've ever had more than 150. I can't say honestly, but I doubt that the last wedding, which might have been actually TJ's, Trevor's, that there would be that many people there.
Your kitchen staff, do you hire any local people for like kitchen staff that would be doing all of that?
We would absolutely love to have local staff that have interest in working at camp. We do have an amazing and loyal group of volunteers that work at camp, but there are paid positions that we do hire seasonally. And we would be very happy to know if there were people in the local community that were interested in the kind of seasonal work. We have 2 full-time employees now, which is a maximum for us for many years. A caretaker and a program director. But there are seasonal roles that we also do hire.
Seasonal, so this isn't going to be anything year round?
So most of our activity has been and will continue to be year round. My first exposure to Camp Croix actually was more than 10 years ago when we held a winter camp out. My church held a winter camp out at Camp Croix. in the statistically coldest weekend of the year. And we would maybe get maximum 50 people, okay? Again, people just generally aren't going to want to overnight with the overnight lodging that is available at Camp Croy, unheated, rustic cabins.
Pretty much seasonal.
They are seasonal. I might defer to others as to the, we haven't designed the, it's talked about in the application, the, Americans with Disabilities or ADA compliant apartments that we would like to repurpose the lodge, I'm sorry, not the lodge, the bathhouse to offer. You would have to speak to somebody else to know what those plans might look like. And I don't think anybody exists that can say, this is what we're planning to do. We just want to be able to make this camp available to those that previously have been excluded from being able to come to camp because they have a physical disability, i.e. that they're wheelchair bound especially. That bathhouse would fit for that purpose.
Does the camp currently have guidelines on, like who can rent the space, hold events there? Are they members, not members, and types of activities?
That's a great question. Yes, we do have a usage policy that we enacted maybe 6 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, but in my time on the board, that it is to be used by members of the Wisconsin Lutheran Synod or those other organizations that we're in fellowship with, the church body is in fellowship with. The Wells is the largest of those bodies.
And types of events?
I'm sorry, yeah. So the usage, the usage policy is who can reserve space. The lodge, the hillside cabin, the lakeside cabin, you sometimes call it the Red Cross, oftentimes called the Red Cross building. Those are limited, as I had mentioned, to those that are members. But your other question was, are there limits to activities?
Right, what can space be used for, what can't it be used for? And just to clarify, all the facilities are for, basically members or those that you.
We certainly are welcome those not in our fellowship to Youth Bible Camp when they're invited by friends who are members. We love to have that occur. But in terms of reserving space where you are saying, I want this cabin, or one of the 35 rustic cabins or otherwise, you have to be a member for that.
And how about event space? Like if someone wanted to hold a wedding event, a conference, would that ring true for those type of activities as well?
I believe it's would. David, my vice president, would agree that is true, that would also apply to activities.
Further questions by the committee at this time?
Oh,
All right, we'll probably be bringing you back up. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing on this matter. And as I said briefly before, we have 3 minutes. Some people have chosen to cede their 3 minutes to a representative for the Lake Association. That person will get to speak longer. So with that, anybody with comments, you can start to come forward and identify yourself, and we'll proceed.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we do have the list of the sign up persons as well as sign up from the door. We have marked off the known persons that have dedicated the speakers that have dedicated their time to Mr. Vivian. So with that said, we'll start Mr. Vivian with those dedicated speakers providing the time and then the rest, or are Vivian last and let the other speakers?
I think it'd be preferable, well, presuming the group that has agreed to do that, to start with people that want to speak and then let their rep for the Lake Association finish up that cleanup, so to speak.
So then we'll just go down the list and call that person up. So that it's in- that
Sure.
it's an organized-
That'd be fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Do you remember that it is a 3-minute time limit in those who speak? If I call your name and you so choose, and I don't have it where you have dedicated your time, please do let me know that. And otherwise you can come forward and speak up to 3 minutes. If you choose not to speak at that time, let me know after everyone that we've called off is done. We'll see if there's anyone that didn't get signed up. Is that
Yes,
okay?
I
They
agree.
can come forward, you can let us know.
And just keeping in mind, we're not preventing anyone from speaking. We're
Correct.
just trying to regulate in an orderly manner who
Because we have
speaks.
a lot of speakers. And then do remember to state your name when you come up so that we can get that recorded. Okay,
who wants-
so
Go ahead.
we'll start with Joseph Wagner. And online, so. You are here, okay. So if you'd like to come up, please.
Morning, my name is Joe Wagner. My parents purchased a double unimproved lot on Rooney Lake in 1968, which I understand is the same year that Camp Croy became what it is today. And my dad sealed with a handshake with Henry Stanko, the owner, and said, "I will not cut down any trees on this lot other than what we need for the cabin." And we've held true to that for now almost 57 years. I think we've been good stewards of the land. We've been associated with the camp, having activities over there with the Lake Association over the years, and things have gone very well up until about 2018, when they filed that 15-year cup with a massive expansion. And there was great pushback. And there was many residents that donated to the fund to fight that cup, which they withdrew at the last moment. So here we are again in 2025, facing the same prospect. And we're a small 329 acre lake, approximately 72 to 75 households on the lake. I'm not sure the exact number. But if you put 4 people at the same time in those 72 properties, there'd be something like 280 people, which is quite a lot. And now they're asking to have up to 220 people a day in addition to that. And the numbers are kind of staggering. But what gets me in is the children. I understand that. I've got 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and their safety is our greatest concern. But they said they've known this for 5 years, that because of that big storm, and yet they haven't had any proposals to provide safety. I agree with having safety, but a $2.5 million project to have this grandiose building, which, as is advertised on their website, may be used for weddings and conferences. The gentleman before me spoke of, oh, they've had 1 wedding. There is no restriction on this. In my opinion, again, the children need to be protected, but this is a wolf in sheep's clothing for future expansion Because that $2.5 million needs to come from somewhere. And if you're gonna have conferences and weddings, that just makes the population on our lake too much at any given time. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And if it is within your legal rights, I would urge you to deny this on these grounds.
Teresa Wagner.
Hi, Teresa Wagner, 1891 Sykes Road. I won't repeat what Joe just said, but I find it interesting. We've been on the lake as long as Camp Croix has existed, as it currently does. And we've had a very friendly, respectful, and a partnership with the camp. The association will use their property for picnics and gatherings. They invite us to come and visit, so it's been very friendly. And as Joe said, that changed in 2018. Over the years, I've had many conversations with guests at the camp. When they are there, I've had phone conversations with them. When we see them on the sandbar, there are generations of families that visit that camp. Their children have been at the camp. Those children grow up. They have families. Those kids come to the camp. It's been for generations. I've talked with volunteer counselors at college age that come back and volunteer their time. They're not paid as counselors because their experience was so impactful and they want to give back. I've talked with adults who serve in the food service and cooks in the building. And many times they give their stipends back to the church because they value serving. All of these patrons desire the charm of the small and familiar camp setting. Not a one of them has ever said they envision a huge multi-purpose building on that property. The camp hasn't been forthcoming. They want you to believe that they are, but their communication has been full of inaccuracies and falsehoods to the association and into the town of Scott with their applications. This was true in 2018, and it is evident now as well. Camp Croix expansion beyond a Bible camp is not in the best interest of the health, safety, welfare, and economic prosperity of Rooney Lake, the town of Scott, or Burnett County. You are all in a position of authority to fully consider the implications of this expansion and the overuse of the property of 220 people each day, anytime throughout the year by this cup. You are the governing body. You have the knowledge and understanding of the process of this cup application and the implications of what might happen with weddings and conferences and continued expansion, because on their website, it says over and over, they want future expansion of this property. You must study and ask questions about the cup, but most importantly, it is your duty to protect the resource of Rooney Lake and the land, and I urge you to deny this cup. Thank you.
Susan, Judge Laney, or Judge Susan Laney.
Yep.
Good morning, Susan Laney. I live at 1802 Sykes Road on Rooney Lake. I'm the president of the Rooney Lake Association. Volunteered for that job, the first association meeting that ever occurred that I attended. And it was just going to be run a couple meetings a year, right? Well, that was 17 and 18, this cup came in, and of course, we're jaded by the 2018 cup. I think it was, the facility was not just going to be for shelter. It was, you know, twice, 2 or 3 times as big as what they're want to do today. So, you know, we all applaud the safety aspect of what they're trying to do for their campers. And we have no issue with that. And they were forthcoming. Keith has been a great person to work with and meet with. And, you know, we thought we had full disclosure from him. And then things changed. And of course, our trust diminished and we fall back to that 2018 cup. And we're really, you know, concerned about the plans for increased usage of the camp. And we brought our concerns up back in August when we looked at the website and the language they were using to talk about the expansion and the expanded usage. They're opening it up to schools for weekend retreats. They're trying to expand, you know, camp. Bible camp's only 5 weeks a summer, and they have family camps for a few weeks in the summer. But they're trying to now expand it from May to October, the usage of it. And we have pushed back on 220, okay? You've heard it, this is a small lake. It is a small lake and it's beautiful, it's pristine, and it's quiet. And you can't add 220 people daily and expect to maintain that. And not to mention, listen, these lakes, whether it's invasive species, wakeboarding, shoreline erosion, all of the things, the lighting, it's going to increase. The risk is going to increase with an increase in the number of people using the resource. And so I asked the land use committee to deny the cup in order to preserve the beautiful resource that is Rooney Lake. Thank you.
Okay, Claudia. I don't want to go through this license. Awesome.
Boston, she was going to cede her time. She was unable to join.
Okay. Shelley Black. Remote.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi, Shelley, you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, introduce yourself and go.
I'm Shelley Black. We have a house at 1812 Sykes. Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed coming to our place on Rooney Lake since the late 80s, and for the past 25 years have been coming every summer with my family for 1 to 3 months. Our attorney will speak in more detail on some of these matters, but I wanted to point out the following. The camp indicates in several recent letters that, quote, we want to reaffirm that our primary purpose remains as a faith-based retreat center, end quote. With an 8,000 square foot, quote, multi-purpose room, end quote, I am concerned about their secondary purposes, such as conferences, weddings, and other large gatherings. The CUP application seeks overnight occupancy at 150 and daytime at 220, which shows up on their plans. Why do you need that extra occupancy for daytime? Weddings, conferences, concerts? The camp should not be allowed to continue to increase its program offerings beyond a summer Bible camp. Their website states, quote, our facilities are available to rent for families, churches, and groups to come enjoy the North Woods of Wisconsin, ... Rent any facilities any time of year, end quote. They want to expand their camp into a commercial year-round facility. This year, they are offering, quote, a new program in the spring and fall, ... Bring your class for an overnight stay, ... Great as a team building back to school kickoff or end of the year trip, end quote. They're very cheap commercial activities which are geared for schools and not churches will take away from local struggling hotels and other tax-paying resorts. The camp is a non-conforming use in the RR2 residential district and cannot expand its operations without violating county zoning laws. Expanding the camp's use would trigger the loss of non-conforming use rights and require compliance with current zoning codes. The camp exceeds maximum density requirements in the RR2 zoning district, violating county regulations regarding the number of buildings allowed. The current proposal, even under more lenient standards, exceeds the permissible number of buildings. The applicant has not demonstrated that the proposal meets key CUP requirements, including health, safety, environmental concerns, and operational management. Critical elements such as mitigating noise pollution and addressing potential water and soil issues are not adequately addressed. The current proposal is incompatible with Burnett County regulations and would further harm the surrounding community. I strongly urge the committee to deny the application based on zoning violations, failure to meet CUP criteria.
Thank you, Shelley. Do we have Simone? Okay. I can hear. Simone, can you unmute? Simone, push *6.
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Simone. We can hear you.
Hi, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. My name is Simone Obrighter. I have a family home at 1812 Sykes Road. I've been coming to Rooney Lake every summer since I was born, which is the past 23 years, so it holds a special place in my heart. My main concern with the camp's plans is the potential impact it will have on the lake environment, such as shoreline degradation, tree removal, and water quality issues. The camp continues to allow more and more motorized boats to the lake each year. These camp boats are damaging to the shoreline because most of their boats are continually dragged on and off the shore and not secured at a traditional dock. Some of the Camp Croix guests with boats have not kept their large wakes in the middle of the lake, which contributes to shoreline erosion. Also, association members have witnessed camp boaters not utilize the decontamination station, which could lead to the transfer of invasive species. Homeowners likely only need to do this once a season and are most likely using the same lake for their single boat. Guests need to do this each time they're going in and out of a lake and are far less likely to follow the rules for a lake they have limited interaction with in the grand scheme of their life. Specifically for this proposal, I'm concerned slightly about tree cutting. The website that advertises a multi-purpose room already, and I acknowledge that these are 2D renders, not completely final, but I don't see a tree in sight. And there's an advertisement for stunning views of Lake Rooney. So I'm just kind of wondering where they plan to A, locate the facility, and B, how they'll get those stunning views, because I'm not an expert on the property, but I just don't really see where they would have those views without cutting down lots of trees. The reality is that guests of the lake are far less likely to follow the rules and treat the surrounding environment with respect than a homeowner. Several examples of this lack of respect that have occurred this last summer include an unsupervised camper continually throwing a fishing lure into one of our beloved loon nests until he caught a loon, and the residents had to listen to the loon crying because a rescue organization was unable to help. The camp's activities could exacerbate existing issues like traffic, noise, and overuse of the lake. Even now, when the campers are dropped off during summer camps, the cars are piling up on Gold Star Road. Residents avoiding driving during drop-off and pickup times because it's so crowded. I'm concerned that emergency vehicles might not be able to access the houses that are beyond that pileup. And how will it be with 150 to 220 daytime users? I respectfully request that you deny this CUP. There's insufficient information to determine whether the effects of their expansion will harm the lake and whether there are sufficient protections in place. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have Richard?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Richard Obrighter, and I want to thank the committee for allowing me to speak. As you heard from my daughter, we have been at that lake for many years at 1812 Sykes Road, and it happens to be directly across from Camp Croy. My kids grew up there. We plan on passing that along as our legacy to them. And I hope that their kids have as good a time and a great formative time there. And we would enjoy to have some grandkids there. Take notes among. And this is why I'm so concerned about this CUP application. Many others are speaking about the specific problems, zoning, and other issues. I want to speak about something very different. My concern, and it is my opinion, that the organization that currently manages camp is, to put it bluntly, not trustworthy. To abide, and they're not trustworthy, to abide by the terms of a future CUP. Why do I have this opinion? Well, you've heard about the 2018 application. This application was done in the dead of winter, when most residents were not around to address the issues. Again, this happened. Despite the claims of transparency, Keith promised the association to share the plans and let us know when they were going to file the CUP. They did not. So yet here we have examples of just a lack of transparency, a lack of actually being truthful. The camp appears to be trying to pull a fast one on the county by submitting a CUP for an expansion that is not allowed by its current use exemption as a summer camp. And it doesn't even come close to meeting the county and state law requirements. And you'll hear more about that from the camp's attorney. The camp already flouts the law by engaging in activities that is not permitted to have. They have, even today's meeting, admitted that they have weddings there. They just posted that on Facebook just a few days ago in a letter. Weddings are not allowed by the use exemption. They've had multiple college groups, and this summer was absolutely the worst, with loud kids going late into the evening, fireworks, loud music. I can only imagine that that's going to go on more and more. The camp is now advertising on its own website, and that was just mentioned, that it's open to people. They've got a winter camp coming up in 2 weeks. They're open to groups coming in. Their own website says you can host a retreat on your own. If this doesn't sound like a commercial activity.
Thank you. Susan Griffith. Remote.
Hello.
Hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Griffith, and thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it. I have been at Rooney Lake for over 40 years with my family. We have had many wonderful times and established great memories with friends and family. I want to focus a little bit on the fact that the camp says they have been very transparent and good neighbors. Few things that have come up regarding that issue. One is the weddings. I know that has been discussed already, but interestingly, they say that they really have not had any complaints about weddings, and this is not true. We understand that Jason Town had some communications with an association member who had complained about loud wedding noise. Jason then indicated that the camp was not allowed to hold weddings and sent them a violation letter. So along with the other people saying that weddings are not even under the current use, which we all know is grandfathered, that is not true, that there have not been complaints. We also understand that they say that they have been respectful of our desire for peace and quiet. We also feel that that's not true. There has been a recent meeting with the camp director and the association members regarding loud noises past 10 p.m. That is their own quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. There were noises past 11 p.m., fireworks, screaming, etc. The camp indicated that they couldn't do anything about it because it was already in the program. My question is, why was it in the program to begin with when that is not their quiet hours? And why couldn't they change it? They basically said, too bad to the association members. They continued to have noise past 11 o'clock. I was going to talk about the inaccuracy of the current cup, but apparently just tonight, they changed it and let you know that it's actually close to 8,000 square feet and not 6,000. If they had known this for many months, why did they not change the cup? It just goes to show you their intentions are questionable. They also indicated that they were going to let the association know about this. And my understanding is that was not done correctly. It also indicated that they would file the cup during a time when most residents would be able to address the cup. That was not done. It was filed at the very last minute in order to.
Thank you. Clay Rash. Oh, okay, sorry. David Whitting.
Good morning, I'm David Wittig. I currently serve on the board of directors for Camp Croix as its vice president and have been involved with Camp Croix since its inception back in 1968 when we acquired the approximate 160 acres and have had that in the ownership of the churches since that time. The main focus of camp has always been the weeks of Bible camp in the summer. Each week is for our youth, where they focus on faith, friendship, skills, and fun, and all with a Christian perspective in the Wisconsin North Woods. We have done our best to meet the needs of the youth campers, staff, and facilities by providing a safe and enjoyable property. As we address the necessity to continue to be code compliant for health and safety requirements, we've concluded that the need for the proposed new ministry building is a must. The needs for storm protection for all our people, updated kitchen facilities, and updated restrooms will be met by the new building. As the camp is licensed by the state of Wisconsin, Department of Health is annually inspecting our camp. And also the fire department from the town of Scott does an annual fire inspection. The future remodel of the existing shower building is intended to be compliant with ADA requirements so that we have some space that people with those kind of conditions are able to use the property as well. We are open to having visits from any of the committee members here and the population around the camp to come and see what we are all about. I know some of you have attended visits to the property. Our caretaker Keith Passo is on site most of the time and is open to give answers. He has met with the association and has presented them a lot of information back and forth between at least two of the members. So some of those comments about being unaware may not be totally accurate. My own personal experiences of serving on our town's board of supervisors, I understand what you committee members are going through. Thank you for your time and your willingness to serve on these committees and to serve the public. I know it's not always easy. You always have somebody upset at the end. So thank you for your time, and I certainly encourage you to approve this CUP. Thank you.
Okay, we have it. We don't have last name. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go back up to Trevor, Becker. Trevor, are you there?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Trevor Holderbecker. I frequently go by TJ Holderbecker. I'm the program director at Camp Croy, so you may have heard from me. I just wanted to cover a couple of things. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I was actually one of the three, I believe there's been 3 weddings at Camp Croy. I can't speak to that for sure because I've only been employed with Camp Croy for the last 4 years. I've been going to Camp Croy for 30 years. I grew up as a camper and then as a counselor, and have just always made sure I had a week to volunteer at camp because other people have already spoken to the impact that camp has, and I'm one of those people. All 3 of the weddings that I know of, the bride had a similar story to me. They were a camper and a counselor, and it had a huge impact for them. And in 2 of those cases, mine included, the groom had also gone to camp and met their wife at camp. So the weddings are very rare. In my 4 years that I have been as a program director, we've had 1 other request for a wedding. That was a similar situation, a young lady who had grown up going to camp, and they chose not to come because they would only be able to have 150 people and their dance would have to end at 11. So it is a very rare thing, and if you are correct that we're not allowed to have them, we will certainly make that change and not do that. But it's certainly not like a commercial venue thing. I also briefly wanted to speak on how we are not a commercial venue. The school field trips was brought up. Those are only for our WELS schools. There are 13 WELS schools, mostly have 50 kids between 1st and 8th grade. In the 3.5 years that I've been advertising, we have had 0 requests for an overnight field trip. As far as conferences go, these again have to be made by a WELS member of our church for a worship or church purpose. We have had 2 such conferences, one 2 years ago and one this year. They comprise 16 pastors and 18 pastors respectively. So when we say the word conference, it means a conference on our scale. So the scale is very small. This winter camp out that's coming up in a couple weeks, we have 22 people coming. Again, this is only for members of our churches. And so the scale of our conferences and things are just very, very small, the same size that they have been. So, and then also to speak to the size of the building the way it is, it's a big project. We wish it was smaller. It is expensive. We wish it was cheaper. But when you need to seat 150 kids at tables, there's a square footage rule that must be applied. Right now, when we're eating a meal in our area and a kid has to go to the bathroom, we have to send them across camp, running through the rain if necessary, to go to the bathroom and come back. We send a counselor with them, and that is if the weather is good enough. If the weather is bad, we tell them they just have to hold it. So having one building where we can seat everyone, feed everyone, and everyone can go to the bathroom, and in very poor weather, quickly go downstairs for a brief period is just essential to us. I love Camp Croy and I love the neighbors. I've had very few communications with neighbors. A lot of these recent complaints I've heard about only at the CUP meeting, and I'm always open to talking about them openly with everyone. So please call me or email me or.
Time's up. Thank you. Okay, so Kevin Kozak. Remote, anybody else?
He was gonna be virtual. I don't know if he's able to join. I know my daughter and son
Yes, I don't
are
see them.
trying, but they have not been able to join.
Okay, so, Kevin.
I think he was gonna see his minutes.
No, no. We have one iPhone.
Don't know who it is.
Okay, there's one participant online that just comes up as iPhone. Is there anyone else online that wishes to speak their 3 minutes right now?
No, that iPhone might be Paul Finnegan, and I'm ceding it to our attorney.
Okay, and I have that already recorded to see that. Anyone else online? Okay, so now we'll go through the sign up sheet in case there's anyone.
Proceed.
Okay, so we have anyone in the audience that has signed up to speak, that wishes to speak? Raise your hand, please. Okay, we'll just, if you'd introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello. Is this on or should I just speak without worrying?
Yeah, just go ahead and speak.
All right, my name is Patty Thompson and my parents bought a property on Rooney Lake, over 50 years ago. And so I've been coming up to Rooney for over 50 years. And Camp Croy has always been a wonderful part of Rooney Lake to me as a kid, because it was this fun, you know, sound of, you'd hear stuff like the bell ringing at dinner time and you'd hear singing. But there's been a couple times when it has sort of gotten louder lately, and mostly at night is the only time when it was ever bothersome for me as far as the loud noise and music. So anyways, I personally do not object to having an ADA compliant bathroom or whatever is needed for people with special needs. And I also support the idea of a storm shelter. I lived through a storm up there, the one where, you know, that in Spooner, there's that boat wrapped around a tree right as you drive. Oh no, I'm sorry, Siren. Okay, anyway, that year we also had damage on the lake. And so I do understand the importance of a storm shelter. But I don't think it's okay to have more people, more noise, more year-round usage, which might happen if there's more like winterizing of structures. And I don't think it's okay for more traffic of people and vehicles. And, you know, also I was kind of curious about if they're going to be building all this new square footage that could accommodate more people. Well, then would they be tearing down the existing structures, or would it be a net addition of square footage? So anyways, also, there's an old saying, if you build it, they will come. Or I think it's not that old, but it was from Field of Dreams. Anyway, so I would say I ask you to deny the CUP as written for those reasons. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the audience? The 3 minutes speaking. Pam?
Thank you. My name is Margaret or Peggy Thompson. My parents have been coming up here and brought us kids. There's 4 generations of us now living that are at the cabin for over 50 years. There's 2 private properties on the lake. I think when I look at Rooney Lake and I see the families there, the cabins, the camp, the one draw of that is the lake. There is no reason for a camp or all of those cabins to be there unless it was on this beautiful lake. It's a pristine lake. There's families of loons there. And I live in the cities, and I've seen for myself the way lakes look and what happens when there's overuse of lakes. I've seen algae blooms. I've seen where you can't swim in the lakes. I've seen just the ecosystems. When there's any imbalance in an ecosystem of human interaction on a body of water, it makes a big difference. And the thing is, once you mess with that, once you lose it, you know, you never know what you have till it's gone. But once you start having more people and an imbalance in the ecosystem, that does affect the lake. And we are all up there, all of us, whether it's the camp or anybody else, it's because of the nature and all that. I love that they've got the camp and they've got these young kids and they're exploring nature. And it seems that I agree that the shelter is a good thing, and compliant bathrooms or whatever, that's a good thing. But I ask that you would deny the CUP as it stands. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Audience? Anyone else? Before we get to Mr. Vivian, correct? No one else?
Okay, proceed.
Okay, just one moment. Is it okay if I let you know how many minutes then have been given to?
Last I knew, it was in the neighborhood of 45. Probably have more. I trust you'll save some minutes. for
Yes, with
future
that.
use.
I trust.
With that other 3 minute, it does come up to 45. So,
Let's see.
I'll watch the clock.
I'll just write down when you started talking
Yeah.
at the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nick Vivian. I'm an attorney with the Eckberg Lammers law firm. I've been before this committee a number of times in prior years. Appreciate the time and consideration that the committee always gives to these applications. Also appreciate this new format. We'll try it out. Hopefully it works well. Provides the opportunity to provide kind of a comprehensive summary of the position of the Lake Association. I'm fortunate to represent the Lake Association. I've represented a number of groups. And the thing that strikes me most often is that folks are passionate about their land. They're passionate about the investments that they've made. You hear person after person step up, talk about their families, talk about the decades that they've owned their properties, the way in which they enjoy the lake. I mean, people are here because they love Burnett County. They love their lakes, and they don't want to see that change. Which is why consistency is important, why adherence to both state law, your local regulations is critical. And over the years, I've found this committee to do a wonderful job in working through the various issues and challenges faced by applications. I want to say that the presentation on the Camps part is compelling from the perspective that I think we're all here because we acknowledge and understand that the health, safety, and welfare of everybody is really important. It's important for campers to have shelter. It's important for them to have places to eat that are safe and secure. Those things are critical, right? But anytime anybody files an application, there are both legal issues and factual issues that need to be reviewed and considered. Part of this process and in getting to learn the land and the lake and whatnot, this camp's been around for a long time. Folks here and their families have been around for a long time. But the camp goes back and predates your zoning regulations. You know, and what does that mean? Well, that means there are some rules that need to be followed. There are some rules that need to be followed in terms of use. In terms of what can be done with buildings, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But what might seem fairly simple or straightforward when an application comes in really becomes much more complex when you look at these issues. And those things that may appear on the surface to be very reasonable may be very difficult to achieve given the law and the regulations. Given the facts and circumstances of a particular land use. I think we sometimes get tripped up on the response side when we look at an application. And if you look at the application in this case, there's not a lot of information with the application. I think the best applications that come in have a detailed narrative, an operations plan. They tell the committee exactly what it should expect. Says we're going to do this. We're committing to do X, Y, and Z. And that's what we're asking you to grant a permit for. Here, the board chair stands up in response to a couple of questions, you know, says, well, it's possible that this could happen. Or generally, we expect that to happen in the future. Or, you know, maybe historically, this has been a rustic Bible camp type operation, but we operate year round and we have some interest in some other programming. Those are the types of answers that create concern, not because they're bad answers, but because they don't provide certainty. And so when you come in and you ask for approval to do something and you're asking that a use be permitted to expand, there should be certainty and there should be clarity. And the Lake Association, even though there's been some communication, the Lake Association feels that there just hasn't been the type of clarity, concise answers that would give them a clear vision of what Camp Croy expects their camp to look like over the course of the next several years. What do they know? Well, what they know is based on what they experienced, and what they experienced back in 2018 was a plan that said over the course of the next 15 years, we want to develop our site and we want to intensify the use. And of course, that application was met with significant opposition, as you can imagine, as you may have observed when you were here, or as you can imagine if you weren't involved in that process, to the point where that application was then withdrawn. But that being said, that's the experience that the Lake Association has had. And so when an applicant resubmits and says, we're going to make improvements that are very narrow, that are tailored to meet the ADA and other legal requirements and to do things that are good, but maybe we'll provide for the possibility of doing something else in the future. Maybe it's possible that we could have more people. Maybe it's possible that we could have other programs. Those are the types of answers that create heartburn and concern. And while I advise all of my clients, it's not fair necessarily to take a slippery slope approach because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It is fair to judge people based on what they've said and what they've done in the past. And so that's how we got to the point at which we are here. And that's why you hear so many concerns from the property owners to say, well, we're not sure. In principle, maybe we're not opposed, but we're not sure about the use that they're actually proposing. When you look now 7 years after the 2018 CUP application at the totality of the application, construct an 8,000 foot multi-purpose building, and it is 8,000 square feet. It's 6,000 up and 2,000 down, perhaps with some limitations. Relocate 17 cabins, repurpose the bathhouse into 2 new apartments, increase maximum occupancy to 220 during the day and 150 at night, construct additional accessory buildings, expand the septic system and relocate the drain field, and increase impervious surfacing and remove mature trees. I don't think that any of those points are in dispute. I think we pulled those directly out of the application. And that's really what you're being asked to consider. In addition to allowing for weddings and conferences or retreats, more 4-season use, improving facilities for programming and storage. That's what they've told us. That's what they've said they want to do. So where does that put us today then with respect to the historical use of this property? Really important. This is the first legal issue that perhaps Jason has talked with Corporation Counsel about, or perhaps it bears a further investigation. But this particular use, the use itself, is a legal non-conforming use. What's a legal non-conforming use? It is a use that existed prior to the enactment of your zoning code. If a camp came in today, a camp of this nature with these services and programs, and said, we want to operate in an RR2 district, my suspicion is you would say that's not permitted by the code. So you can't do it today, right? And so they've come in, and not only do they say, we want to continue what we've been doing in the past, we want to expand what we're doing. We want to bring more people in. We want to change the services. We want to change the configuration. So even though it may be with an eye toward ADA compliance and dining hall and these other things, you cannot intensify that particular use. You can't enlarge that particular use. So your discussion and your thought around, well, should we allow them to do more than they're doing today, has to be centered around, is it even permitted to allow them to do more than they're doing today? It's our position, based on what limited information we have from the application and from the presentations, that they're asking to do more tomorrow than they can do right now. If that's the case, then they have to bring all of their uses into compliance with today's code. I don't think that's what they want to do, because they couldn't do it under today's code, right? And so fundamentally, from a legal perspective, we believe that this application has to be denied for that purpose. We're not getting into Act 67 on this argument. We're not getting into can they perform under conditions. This is, are they allowed to do under the code what they're requesting? And we would submit the answer to that question is no, which requires full rejection from the committee. Once you get past the use, then you have to look at the buildings because you have legal non-conforming uses and you have legal non-conforming structures. Again, what we have here are structures that predated your code requirements and that have been there for a long time. They are legal non-conforming structures. So when they come in and they say, well, can we build another lodge? Can we reconfigure, take down, rebuild other buildings on the site? The answer is no. I mean, under the law, the answer is no. They need to come back with a plan for full compliance, not just a request to be able to move buildings under a conditional use permit. And that's significant because when we talk about permitted uses and conditionally permitted uses are uses in the Burnett County Code that the county board has said you can come in and make without further approval. Conditionally approved uses are uses that the county board has said these uses are acceptable, but you have to make application and we have to be able to consider whether we can place conditions to make the use reasonable, right? So you have permitted uses, you have uses that are in theory just fine, but applications have to be reviewed or committee has to consider conditions. But now we're dealing with a legal non-conforming use, a use that was not permitted before the code, buildings that were not permitted, or uses that were permitted before the code, buildings that were permitted before the code, but wouldn't necessarily be permitted today. Again, you know, for example, could you come in and could you build this entire camp under the existing code in the way it exists today? Our analysis is you can't, which makes it legal non-conforming. And so can you approve the buildings that they're requesting to be built? From a legal perspective, this is legal issue number 2, we submit the answer is no, because they're legal non-conforming structures. They don't comply with the code today. You know, understand they may comply in some parts with setbacks, but they don't fully comply. And so you can't approve them. Let me give you an example. In our letter, we cite density as a particular issue. When you look at your code requirements on density today, the camp couldn't exist in the way that it does with the buildings that it has. Even if you, the code, the most liberal reading that you possibly could, which I don't know any counties that read their ordinances as liberally as they could. But even if you did that, they would still be over the limitation for square footage on their buildings. And so that's a legal issue, a threshold that I don't think this committee can get past. When we move to the next legal issue, the question is this use even eligible for a conditional use permit? Again, back to my discussion about permitted uses, conditionally permitted uses, things only lawyers love. You know, you look at it and you have to think through if it's not a permitted use, because you couldn't do it today, and if it's not a conditionally permitted use, how can they be eligible to file an application for a conditional use permit? They are a legal non-conforming use that cannot increase their intensity without coming into full compliance with today's code. I would submit that they are not even eligible to make application for a conditional use permit because they are a legal non-conforming use and not a currently permitted use or a use that could be permitted. Why is that significant? You had 2 applications before this hearing, and you had a gunsmith that wanted to come in and wants to open a building and he needs certain approvals. That use is permitted under the code. And so he reads the code, he sees that it's permitted or conditionally permitted. He files his application. You have the authority to approve that application because he's a conditionally permitted use. he can get his permit. The camp as it exists today doesn't fall as a conditionally permitted use unless you strain really hard and make some sort of an exception in your code. So we would submit that they're not even eligible for a conditional use permit, which would require your denial. Again, all of these legal arguments, they don't get to the traditional arguments that we're talking about. Those traditional arguments being the use is just too intense, you can't impose sufficient conditions, wrong use, wrong place, those types of things, where you exercise your judgment and discretion based on the facts of what's been submitted in the application. When we get to that part of the analysis, now the question becomes, if you decide, nope, Nick's wrong on the legal issues, we don't see issues, we don't think these are legal non-conforming uses not eligible for approval for expansion. Well, then you get to the next layer of analysis, which is, do they meet the requirements of your ordinance for the issuance of a conditional use permit? And that's where I'd rely on the testimony from the folks that came and spoke about the issues and the challenges that they see with this particular expansion in this particular location. Your code is very clear on each and every consideration that you need to make. And there are 11 or so of them with some subparts. It's section 45-504, the sub C, which you apply all of the time. We've created an exhibit to my letter, which goes through and identifies the requirement that they have to satisfy on the one hand, and the evidence they have to prove and provide substantial evidence that they've met your requirements, the evidence that they've supplied to satisfy that requirement. We would argue that they haven't satisfied any of the requirements based on what was submitted in their application. Now, they've since provided some testimony. I've seen a letter from the camp that's gone out to the public that says these aren't issues, we've satisfied them. Whatever gets distributed to the public is not within the purview of this body. It's what's before you, and you have to make a determination as to whether they've provided substantial evidence that they have complied with and satisfy your requirements. We would submit that they have not met the threshold. We don't have operational plans. I mean, heck, I don't know where they're going to park cars for 150 or 220 people. Now, you've heard from the residents that the cars are parked out on the street. We don't think that's a good idea. We don't think that that is sufficient to protect the surrounding property owners. We believe, frankly, that their plan, whatever it might be, should require parking to be internal to their site. But we don't know because we haven't seen the detail regarding all of these specific requirements. And so if you find on balance that they have not supplied sufficient information to satisfy your requirements, sufficient information being substantial evidence, then the options are either to continue or table their application, providing them with specific direction as to what you need to see in order to have a better understanding as to what their operation is, or it's to reject the conditional use permit in whole because they haven't met their threshold or their burden. If we get through all of that, if we get through the legal issues, and if you go through and you look at each one of the requirements under your code, and you decide that their use is reasonable and that it can be conditioned, then you have the right to impose all reasonable conditions on this use that are necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare, the surrounding community and the property owners that would be impacted by the expansion of the use. We've spent a considerable amount of time working with our clients, and we've attached as Exhibit B to my letter minimum conditions of approval for your consideration that we believe, again, only if you get to that point, but that we believe could help mitigate some of the concerns that have been raised, including a specific term for the conditional use permit, requirements for light fixtures, quiet hours, noise, boats, off-highway vehicles, water education, construction, contact, having a contact, usage, permitting, septic plans, some outdoor requirements, parking, and occupancy. All of which would be geared toward the mitigation of the impacts on the folks that ultimately have been there for decades and ultimately will be those that are seeing whatever results from the expanded use. So, you know, as we look at it, I try to be very logical in terms of how I think about these applications. And it's really the process that I go through with prospective clients to say, okay, do we really have a basis for taking the time of the committee to contest an application? Well, what are the legal issues? We know them here, and because of the long history of the camp, there are significant legal issues. If we can get past those legal thresholds, then what comes next? Can they even file an application? Do they have the right to file an application? We don't think so. We think that's a roadblock. And then even if they can get through all of that, how heavily do you have to condition the proposed use in order to make it palatable and to not upset the balance of the entire surrounding community? So that's the work that we do. And that's the work that we've provided and that you have as our substantial evidence of our position that there's more at issue here than simply saying we need a shelter, we need rest facilities. I think those are all well-intended uses and upgrades and improvements and consistent with the historical use of the property. But when you get beyond that, then the question is, what becomes expansion? What becomes enlargement? And can they do it with respect to the buildings? What becomes expansion? Well, they're going to build a new building. They're not going to tear down the old building, which means you're going to have more square footage. It means you're going to have more places for people to live. That's an expansion of buildings. It's an expansion of structures. And, you know, then beyond that, are they permitted to apply for this application? And we don't think so. We think there are too many legal issues. We don't think, you know, ultimately the historical use of the property allows them to simply come in and say, we want to make changes. They're allowed to make changes under the law. It's a question of whether they have to comply with today's code or whether they can come in and request special exception from this committee, more in line with a variance than in line with a conditional use permit. And so for those reasons, I think I've kept it to 20 minutes, hopefully, or 25 minutes. But for those reasons, we asked this committee to either reject the application in total or delay the application to confer with your corporation counsel to discuss these legal issues, or to require additional information from the applicant to fully understand what it is that they're intending to do by the terms of their request. Otherwise, you know, we think a denial is warranted at this point. Should you disagree and should you decide that ultimately they have the right, they can apply, you have to condition, or they're entitled to see your conditions, we would ask that you strongly consider very heavy conditions that maintain the impacts to the site, that don't allow noise pollution, sound pollution, parking spillover, environmental considerations to have a negative impact on the surrounding community and ultimately impact the folks that are well invested in their own personal properties. So again, I thank you for your time. I appreciate the format and certainly happy to answer any questions that the committee might have at the appropriate time.
I'll start with one.
Sure.
In the context of a non-conforming use, which is, let's say, notified of code deficiencies. So amount of square footage for seating inside, for example. Existing non-compliant private sewage systems that need to be replaced it seems that those would not be considered an expansion of a non-conforming use to correct, as long as the occupancy and use remain within what the non-conforming use has been demonstrated to be, right?
I would agree, yeah, because the use itself isn't changing. In your scenario, the improvements that are being made are code-related improvements. You know, theoretically, you wouldn't even need a conditional use permit.
No, I would expect that would be permitted.
Correct, just to make the code, yeah, but
The sanitary code.
correct.
Regulation. Sanitary.
That's exactly right.
And, you know, the code type of things we're talking about. Yes, I'm looking at this and some agreement about safety and some agreement about code compliance.
Yeah, I think that,
Beyond that, the rubber is-
and the challenge comes in that they want to build a new building, right? So you have code compliance issues that ultimately, if I as a landowner received a notice from the building department that I'm in violation, I have to make those improvements. If my response is, well, I'm just going to build a new building and leave the old building, well, I still have to make whatever improvements need to be made in the old building, but I have to deal with the approvals that are required for the new building as well. And I think that's the challenge here, is that it's not just the old building needs to be brought up to code. The proposal is they want to build a brand new 8,000 square foot building, which is what you're being asked to consider.
Other questions by other members of the committee? Have you talked with your client and explained to them?
Act 67.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier, we don't get to the point of Act 67 and this is what we really need to do under all CUPs, I think, henceforth, is first determine the one section of everybody's CUP ordinance that says it's a use that can be permitted at some locations in the district, but not everywhere. As you know, we got overturned on one where we didn't adequately demonstrate that we did that, in my opinion, right? But that would be the first decision the committee needs to come to a conclusion on before proceeding with conditions. And then asking, I would think, both sides to demonstrate conditions that they would like acceptable by the applicant and recommended by the other side for us to decide whether what we're going to do, you know?
I think that's exactly right. And I think it's prudent. Act 67 is the balancing of whether a particular use can be located in a particular location and what conditions should be imposed, right? And essentially the CUP law now says that if a developer and applicant comes in and says, I can meet every one of your conditions, it's really difficult to deny a conditional use permit application. You know, unless a particular use is not suitable for a particular location. And that's why, you know, from my perspective, on this one, you don't really get to Act 67 until kind of the fourth level. And the question is, can they apply for what they're applying for? And then if you get past that threshold question, then the question is, you weigh all these impacts against what they're proposing. And you have to decide based on the record before you, whether you can place conditions or not place conditions. You know, I would submit that if you get to that point, you take a look at the conditions that we're suggesting, because we think there are, if you get to that point, there are conditions that are really important to help kind of stop impacts at the boundary lines to this property or any property. That being said, I don't think Act 67 is the first line of questioning on this particular application. I think it may be the last line, and you have to decide whether you get there or whether there are challenges based on the historical use of this property that create other issues that don't even allow you to get to Act 67 consideration.
Further questions? At this point, we'll continue to see if the Camp Croy folks want to make some bit of a response.
Perfect, thank you.
So you have anything to further add or modify what you would do at this point?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
In the conditional use permit application, it specified that the multipurpose building would be 6,000 square feet. The presentation we just had, it was mentioned 8,000 square feet. I'd like to know which it is.
I believe I'll take a stab at it first, but I think they said that that's the addition of the basement, which is intended to be a hardened, used only for emergency services, but it does add not square footage from a vertical view, but of capacity volume. It has another floor, let's call it. Is that correct?
I don't know if the exact number is 8,000. If TJ is still on, he might know. But otherwise, we could certainly get back to you with more accurate.
I know. So the main floor with all the uses of the fellowship hall, the restrooms, the kitchen, mechanical spaces, storage spaces, that's 6,000 square feet. The lower level is a partial basement. That's 1,440 square feet, and intended use for only emergency storm shelter. Otherwise unoccupied for the rest of it, basically.
Did that answer your question, Supervisor Tucker?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The other question, I shouldn't let you go.
That's right.
And it isn't you are not the right answer, I don't think. I mean, pass it on. Did Camp Croy consider offering conditions for this that would mitigate the concerns that you've heard? You haven't formally put pen to paper to suggest conditions of your own, right?
You know, outside of, I'm here to speak towards the building, so outside of, you know, just meeting code compliance, you know, accessibility compliance, things like that. Make sure that the building's engineered to, you know, standard building codes and things like that.
Sure.
You know, that's what I'm here to do my due diligence on, and I can assure you that the building plans are.
Right, and it's like that, it's not, you're the wrong person to put
Right,
in the
but in
hot
terms
seat on
of,
this.
yeah,
but-
in terms of some of the other stuff that might be.
Mr. Vivian's, presentation included suggested conditions. And in this, in the same note, you might ask for the camp to offer conditions that we would impose on it.
Right.
To address these concerns, but I'm not expecting you to do it right this minute, but I
Right.
mean,
And that might be something that we have to go, maybe Clay can speak to it too. The one thing that I kept hearing was expansion. And yes, they are proposing a new building. And that's basically because the space requirements for the occupancy of 150 persons, which is not a change. That's what it's always been. That's what we're not asking for an increase in occupancy. There's no change there, so there's no expansion with the occupancy. So what I was charged with was designing those spaces to meet current code based on that 150. The buildings right now don't meet that. The fixture requirements and things like that for the bathhouse, you physically can't accommodate that within the spatial requirements of the existing building. Same with the dining, same with the commercial kitchen. So that's why we're looking to, we have to either add on to those buildings, which, we've kind of done a existing facility study to look at that option. And, it's just not feasible. And, you heard some of the operational criteria and hardships of not having those uses in the same building, kids running back and forth to go use the bathroom, that kind of thing. So logically, it made the most sense to house all those functions within the same building and then just to accommodate the square footage. And this is the minimum square footage required for accommodating those spaces. The previous application, the building was asking for an increase in occupancy, increase in bed count, increase in, lodging, all of those things. The building was 3 times the size in 2018. From my perspective, it looks like camp has listened to all the concerns from the committee, from the neighbors, from the Lake Association, and has taken those concerns into consideration and dialed this back, to meet their basic functional needs of their day-to-day use. And that's what's being proposed and is on the table today. So.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
have just some questions and I apologize for not asking sooner. I see, how many beds are there generally per cabin or does it vary?
There's 2 sets of bunk beds in each cabin, 3 sets, 4 sets.
For the numbers.
4 bunks. So four twin beds.
Okay.
So each cabin has 4 people.
And then I also see, what is it, like 15 campsite or RV sites?
Yeah, I think there's 14 or 15.
So
But there's 14.
what's with the RV sites? I mean, are there sewer hookups?
I think some have electric and that's.
And who occupies those?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out the math, 15 sites, 30 some cabins, I mean, do you stated the 150?
And they're included in the 150 is your question.
Well, math wise, it could be more, but I just don't know, if it's kind of like you cut it off at 150 or there's potentially more staying there at a time.
I don't have the math in front of me. I believe back in 2018, we did all those what's that?
Clay, come on up. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. I'll wait. Yeah.
You hold to the 100 kids for Bible camp?
Yes,
That's the question.
yes,
And then you've got approximately up to 50 staff.
and volunteers, and not staff, volunteers, and staff, there's the sum of those two. I will give you one anecdote that might help. And TJ can also back me up on this. When we had undertaken to conduct fundraising for this, we wanted to invite people that had a love for camp or had a potential love for camp to go on sort of an escorted visit, maybe a day visit, maybe an overnight visit. I forget what we called it, but sort of a sensory experience of youth Bible camp. And that was intended to be 1 or maybe 2 people with an escort that could show them camp, that might have a love for it, but maybe hadn't had a direct experience there. And when I brought this to TJ as an idea, TJ said, well, we would have to do it in one of these other weeks of youth Bible camp that is not as occupied, like the newest week, we call it early week, is not as occupied. So that would be a better time to do it because we will be approaching the 150 mark with our busiest weeks. So that would be just an example of us self-regulating with a limit of 150 people during busiest time of year, youth Bible camp.
Isn't that what you're licensed for too, though? And there's a 2-to-1 ratio for the Department of Health or whoever's issuing the license for 2-to-1 staff. That's where those numbers come from. It's from the licensing agency. It's not just self-regulation.
Very good. TJ again might be able to help in that regard.
Well, again, we're just sorting through it right now.
So question probably for the architect. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
That's right. Chris.
And it's my understanding after getting a tour of the site that no trees need to be taken down for the new building.
No, and one of the main purposes for relocating those cabins is because the cabins are pretty much where the building location is going to go. They're just going to kind of move them to one side or the other. So you got girls camp on one side, boys camp on the other, restroom for boys and girls on each side. So it's easy access. But yeah, if you saw where the building's staked out, that's where it's proposed to go. Minimum disruption to site, close to utilities, close to the septic, like I mentioned earlier. It's a good and reasonable location,
In Clay, it's also my understanding that there are some trees that will come down, but it's because they have oak wood.
There are trees that are currently in the footprint of the proposed new building. Yes, those will be removed. And I don't know that every one of them has oak wilt, but they are basically too close together. They need to be thinned anyway, but yes, in that particular area, they'll be removed.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I think you were sort of offering for us to provide a response. Would you like us to do that?
Well, yeah, the short answer, yes, I think you need to see whether we're gonna be able to get it done today is the question. I don't know that we can. But I think I would like to, if we were to continue this hearing, I'd like you to see conditions you would offer in response. I also am concerned, I think I'd like to have our council, and again, committee consensus on this, I'd like to have our council look at the issues that have been raised appropriately as to how much can we permit you to do without, to bring you into code compliance without crossing into that situation of whether you can even proceed any further than that. You know, and to a certain extent, we have other Bible camps in Burnett County, and we have done some improvements. I think Herzl Camp almost rebuilt itself, right? And Trade Lake, you know, but I mean, and we've also had Bible camps close and sell, Spirit Lake Camp, or Methodist Camp. I'd like us to look at that to see what, get an additional opinion on how much we can really do before we fall afoul of the expansion of a non-conforming use that's wouldn't be permitted otherwise. Okay. So I think it may be a scale down further issue of yours. May not matter that much on the actual building size. We're talking use, in my mind, not as much construction, but relocating the cabins because of accommodation or code, you know, it kind of makes it okay, which is it? Is it code compliance or is it reconstruction, right? So there's some things I'm not prepared to answer today because I don't know the answer yet, right? So,
And too, with the cabins, it might be helpful to know that they're not permanent structures, they're on blocks. So I mean, you can literally pick them up with a skid steer and move them, you
never
know?
mind, if you put it on the ground, we consider it a permanent.
Right,
structure,
but I'm just saying, they're not on foundations
we're
and,
not rebuilding them.
correct, yeah.
Another interesting aspect of the argument, right? Herzl Camp, the curmudgeon story side for a minute, but Herzl Camp Bob Dylan had attended that camp, and the kids wrote their names on the rafters and whatnot. We were demolishing those old cabins to rebuild. People were searching for the Dylan autograph that had to be there.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it was gonna pay for half the cabins. I don't think they ever did find it, but you know. But I mean, it was a different scenario, but we permitted that. And I want to look at what we did then and compare that to what we want to do now. Okay, so, that's not a good answer for everybody, that we might not get done with this today, but that's my thoughts. I'd like the circuit committee we're still in the public hearing, so if we're done with the public hearing, I'll close it. I close the public hearing for now, and then we'll discuss this among the committee in open session.
Could I just say one thing?
Sure.
With your request that we consider conditions to attach to the conditional use permit, we are very happy to do that.
And you'd be offering those conditions.
And we can offer those
similarly to what the
conditions.
Lake Association has
Yes,
offered.
yes.
So we may want you to do that. I'll close the public hearing and we'll discuss that. Karen.
I'm definitely interested in having our corporate counsel, you know, answer a few questions. See, there was a lot of legal issues brought up, and it's more knowledge than I have in front of me today. So.
Said the same thing that there's some legal issues that I was not aware of between being grandfathered in and this kind of thing. I would feel a lot better than after the corporate council that some of these questions that were raised.
Agree.
Yep. I don't, and
Supervisor Tucker is on the phone. Are you on with us or? Are you there, Luke? Can you hear you?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, we're talking about doing some digging on our side with the Corp Council. You agreeable to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I'm supportive of the cup eventually, but I think in light of our recent court activity that we've had, I would really like to see us have ordinances in place that meet the guidelines that the camp needs. So yeah, I'm supportive of us taking a little bit slower approach.
And since it's kind of a canvassing the committee, I agree as well. I think what I would ask for then is a motion to continue this hearing to next month to have our council review the issues raised and for us to determine to what extent can we allow expansion before we even start talking about conditions. Expansion, I should say that. Renovation is the word I want to use. We're not talking about approving expansion as much as renovation.
And I think if the camp is that old, it probably does need some work. But we have to do it by the legal
Right. I mean,
process,
how
whether
much,
it be a variance or a.
how much can we
conditional
allow?
use permit.
How much can we allow before we run afoul of our own regulations?
Yes.
That's really what I'm thinking about here. And I think the testimony I've heard, there's not a lot of objection to safety, storm shelter, whatnot, and some upgrades, appropriate upgrades to what they have. It's the specter of it becoming something that it is not that has raised the concern. And I think that's what we are charged with figuring out. But I don't think we can figure it out today.
In this case, without the council.
Right. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue the meeting, the hearing on this, and we reopen the public hearing again next time.
I make them.
Pardon?
Just make a motion.
Well, yeah, I would say, and within that motion should be consultation with Corp Council with the targets that we've discussed and what we can do. And having Camp Croy offer conditions on their behalf to address those concerns, those two components.
Mr. Chair, I have a further question.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so our staff submitted a 3-page response to this cup. And I'd like to ask Mr. Town, I mean, recommendations were made if we were to, grant the conditional use permit. Mr. Town, do you feel that the conditional use permit is really just a build a building, move 17 cabins, relocate campsites, and remodel an existing bathroom? I mean, are we really outside of our ordinances, or is it even questionable in your eyes, Mr. Town?
In my eyes, no, I think we're following the ordinance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have let them continue with the process.
Okay, that was my question specifically because, staff works pretty hard to kind of go through and look at our ordinances, and I'm supportive of the cup, but I mean, I don't want to put us in any gray area where we have legal trouble again either. So I guess that's my part on that. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I'd add to that historically we have done some other projects on some other camps. This one is a little unique in that it has never had any kind of a permit for its use. And I think that we may have had some updates in the past at Herzl and Wood Lake. Without doing the research, we need to maybe look at what we've done. We're following our past practice of being pretty generous in interpretation to allow it to go forward. We don't have any language specific to having Bible camps, for example. And you could argue maybe we should, but we don't. Okay, so.
I guess I'll just interject too. There's nothing in the A2 that was brought up, the prior application about gunsmiths.
That's.
But we heard that one too.
Home occupation, but
we don't list every single possible item that can exist in the ordinance.
I'm gonna go in a small sermon for a moment, is that the beauty of a conditional use permit was its flexibility. And in my opinion, Act 67 clipped its flexibility substantially. And so we're still trying to figure out whether we should or shouldn't have even some conditional uses that in the districts they're in. But that's a discussion for another time, so.
So in response to that, are we getting bogged down because we're saying Bible camp instead of just camp?
I don't think so. I think the,
I mean,
but it is,
in order for them to survive, they may have to change their policy a little bit in order to, I mean, utilities are all going up, everything is going up. And if they're keeping with the same small guidelines, how will they ever survive?
it's, as we all said, times have changed and there's a lot more out there at stake values. I mean, when all of the church camps in Burnett County happened, that waterfront property wasn't that expensive, you know? And the churches could buy it and do that. It was common. Some people just donated land, right? It's a different world we live in now, for sure. So, but I think at this point, we have a motion. I think we all understand the motion, do we, right?
I think a motion to continue,
Continue the hearing.
continue the hearing to March 4th, to allow, time to have our corporate counsel advise or answer, legal questions that arose today. Any other specifics?
And Camp Croy could provide,
Offer suggested conditions to address issues raised today.
Okay, and for Camp Croy to, offer conditions, to address concerns that were, brought up today.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Szymanski. Let's do a roll call vote on this one. Supervisor Tucker,
No.
Supervisor Moyer,
Yes.
Supervisor Szymanski,
Yes.
Supervisor Lumber,
Yes.
Supervisor Chuck Anderson,
Yes.
Supervisor Aaron Lacqua Anderson,
Yes.
Supervisor Conroy, yes. Yeah, we need to clear on what we can do.
Yes, just one clarifying question. Has Camp Croy received the letter from the association's legal counsel?
Yes.
Yeah.
We received it from Jason
Okay.
on my request.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, everybody would have liked this to have been done today, but it was just too complicated, folks. So we will continue it till next month. And if we're not ready next month, we would continue it further, but I hope ideally we will be all here taking care of this next month. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, if you were happy to propose conditions. I'm just wondering to help as you were considering this matter as well, the timing of that you would like to see proposed conditions from us.
Good point. I'd like to see everything in here. We're gonna have to renotice this. Jason, when would our first notice be on the meeting? To stay consistent with Weber, we should have this 2 weeks ahead of the 4th of March, ideally.
Correct. I always put the packets together about a week before the meeting. So that's when I get everything digitally, combined for you guys, and then it goes out online too at that point.
But the reason I say that is that everybody's gonna wanna see these well in advance. So it would be, it's a straight month, like March or February and March, right? So if you could have them in Jason's hand in 2 weeks to distribute to Mr. Vivian, to the Lake Association, so people know what your proposal is. There's some law about this, there's some case law. But you can't bring in stuff the last minute and submit it to the committee without the public at large being aware of what it is. So you need it in 2 weeks, I would say.
Can all of those future communications be sent directly to Mr. Town, and then he can distribute those to committee members? If they're sent to us as individuals on the board, then we don't know if the other individuals are getting such communications, and that poses a difficulty for us. So if they can be directed to Mr. Town, and then he can.
I don't mind getting them as chair, but it's it is appropriate to send it through Jason. Jason can distribute it. I'd like it to not have the bottleneck of not satisfying some case law that it wasn't in everyone's hands appropriately.
And the easiest way to ensure that that bottleneck is not made is to go to Jason.
Yes,
Which
it
is
is.
what we have been doing.
Yes, unfortunately, I should get all of your emails and letters, and then yes, I would broadcast them back to the committee members.
Any further questions on this? So with that, then we're gonna continue this one next month and we will pick up for the rest of our agenda.
Want to maybe take like a 5 or 10 minute break?
Yeah, I was gonna call recess right now.
Yes. Chairman Conroy.
Greg Duke is asking you a question.
Hey there, Craig. Say, I have a meeting at noon. I'm wondering if you'll excuse me for a meeting.
He said he has a meeting at noon. He was wondering if you'd excuse him.
My question.
I can't hear him right now.
He said, go ahead, yes.
Too much background noise, I'm not hearing you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Conroy. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Good job, Pat.
See you later.
I worked with. Yeah. Otherwise, I was like, it's fair enough.
This is nothing. Nothing.
That's okay.
Morning. My name is Russ Chadra. I'm with School Specialty. I'm calling about a back to school kit program that we have school kids, and I'm wondering if
My title would be county supervisor.
Yes.
All right. All right.
All right.
Duke is excused.
Meeting, yeah.
Checked out.
You might do more.
Oh, well, you probably just went on a lunch date.
Audio back on.
I don't know if you thought we were gonna be able to finish this today, or it wasn't gonna be here if we did, so.
He said he had another meeting at noon.
Yeah, no, but you
Yeah.
voted against us continuing.
Oh.
That was a vote of confidence for Jason, which I have as well, but I figure it's a good idea to check with Clark County.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Don't forget to look for that salmon.
Yeah, what's the date? Okay, let me know. Thank you.
Okay. All back and present. Okay, we'll wait for the.
Looks like I want the new Grassbury Rotary.
Just already done.
That's fine.
But you were, and Chuck and I were experienced at this kind of thing, right? And not everybody else.
Yeah, at least we didn't have to get lunch today. Had to have that a few times. We had to bring in lunch.
Absolutely.
You know?
Or you can good. Oh, yeah.
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 In fact, we were accused of colluding during lunch and we must have talked about that hearing, even though we never did.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
You have to stay on
Yeah,
speaker
pretty well.
during lunchtime, or what do you do?
No, we didn't. No, we know enough not to do that, you know, but
One of the marathon sessions lasted until close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
well, we had 4 consecutive days of public hearings in the highway shop.
Yeah.
And every one of them contentious, and Jason had kind of broke them up so they wouldn't all be contentious one day.
And the first day was the toughest because we didn't really have our audio issues worked out.
I think Chuck rescued us from that. Okay, we're back in session. And on our agenda at this point was a review of the final plat? No.
No, this was an oopsie. That shouldn't be on the agenda. That was a came from last month. So there you go. You got 7 already done.
Good, that was good. On the review of potential changes, I don't want us to spend a lot of time on that today, we've been here long enough. But one thing, Jason and I were talking about, I know, Jason notices some stuff that's probably in the codified. We don't show it. This is great. We don't show a campground at all, and we did provide it. In the section about campgrounds and conditional uses, we do. But that's where it was supposed to be a 25-unit campground with, only in conjunction with an existing permitted or conditional use. It's not there.
Yeah,
And then you and I had talked about the potential for removing monetary mining from E2 and putting it into the new E5 district. But I don't want us to, I just want us to think of it. I don't want to see that as a recommendation yet. Because I think in order to do that, we would need to rezone all of our existing monetary mines to E5. Because otherwise it becomes legal non-conforming uses, so we can't expand. We don't want that either. And I think that would need some agreement among the towns, not that they would support those rezonings to do that. You know, before we do it, we don't want to do it first and then an uproar because we all of a sudden shut off the valves.
So in A2 then, so that is on page.
I only went through this once and then you started getting a flurry of employee stuff, so.
Yeah.
I'll get back to it.
So that's on page 19,
Okay.
right? Let's see. No. No. Page 20, line 34 and 35. So I'll unstrike that.
Let's put that, put one of your green notes in instead.
Oh, yeah.
Should, if we could do this, but we need to provide accommodation for the existing non-metallic mining facilities. And in order to do that, we need to know all of our NR 135 permits. And who is appropriate to accept. Like, one out of the technical how far back, I think it's still active, but it's never. It could be a legal one. We need to figure out where we would need to accommodate.
Yeah, I would almost wanna look at every pit, and just kind of see what they're currently zoned.
Right, we need to do a little.
Yeah.
Our own little study, but I think we learned already on one time that in some places, A2 is too developed and residential to do that, so we should probably look at.
So, and then back to your A2, the 25 unit is right on that same page, page 20. It's right up there on line 21.
Oh, okay.
It has that
Oh, yeah.
25 sites cap.
I'm sorry.
Yep. No, that's fine. You had me scared there for a minute. I'm like, I swore we had that in there.
The other thing I think we need to, we put in a couple of things in exclusive ag. In exclusive ag, I see now, but this version still talks about a CUP, more than a certain number of animals.
Is it more than 500 or is that,
It
wouldn't matter anymore? All right.
This, I think we need a boilerplate. We can do like a boilerplate thing that X number of animal units are permitted.
Mhm.
And animal units in excess of 250 are also subject to chapter 18 citing regulations. Because that's true,
Mhm.
even if you're an A2, you can go up to 500, but if you go past 250, you're gonna come under the citing. That was, the reason it's like that is we found that we could drop it for the state 500 maybe. Because we had been doing 250 for so long. We were very big. And the state would allow us to apply citing improvements down to 250.
So in the exclusive ag, yep, I see that language there. So then there's no CUP required for any number of units. It's just that citing would kick in.
Citing kicks in, and citing kicks in everywhere post 250.
Correct. Yeah.
We just need to make it say the same thing in the.
Yep. Yeah.
So that is meant to be filed.
No,
No. Okay.
it'd be no. None. You should be on page 14.
She's in, no, she was in.
A2 or something
She
probably.
was in A4.
Oh, okay, A4.
The
Yep.
A4 language could say.
Keep telling us page numbers.
Maximum of 500 animals. Semicolon. More than 250 animals are subject to chapter 18.
Yep, so I think all the language is right in A4. A2 now I'll take exclusive ag, I'll take that 500 cap out. But citing still applies at 250. I did have a question on A2 in here. Do we want to limit that at like a certain number of animal units?
Not until we can do this.
Okay,
I think that. We get ahead of ourselves, that you start limiting it and never provided you.
yep,
And I think, again, there's gonna be places like Roosevelt, it's all the way through, even AA.
yeah. Well, I just think though of places like Oakland where there is A2 and it's like, I'm sure they don't want 500 animal units on a 10-acre chunk.
No,
You know, so.
You might wanna look at You raise a really good point, because a guy, in Washington County, at the time, the guy was gonna put a milking parlor in on like an acre because it was called agriculture. There's a non-conforming parcel. And we fortunately had some language that non-conforming parcels could only be used for a single family dwelling type of thing. But he could do that because theoretically he could truck his manure away and he could bring in feed and not have to farm, just had the animals in a milking parlor. And it seemed like, kind of like wrong, you know, I'm talking in the 80s, you know, but it was possible. That's always the rub, is the stuff that is theoretically possible, but really a terrible idea when you look at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are the couple things that popped into my mind and I want to check. So do you want to run through what the highlights might be that?
Yeah, so now you wanna be looking at pink colors. Cause those are things that I changed since the last time we looked at it. I don't know what color I'll use for the next version, kind of running out of colors here,
Are you talking pink or are you talking purple?
well.
Magenta.
Magenta, yes.
Depending on if you're looking at digital or hard copy, I think it looks different
That looks kind of like
colors, yes, the magenta
Yeah, thank you.
color. The pink,
It says pink right on there.
yeah.
Variation of.
What did I, so just to go through real quick, page 2, I added a definition of boarding house, so there was some things where we were kind of talking about what were definitions of different things, so I thought might as well add a few in there, other words that we didn't have added. You guys wanted me to come up with a definition of a chicken. So I took a stab at defining a chicken.
I like it.
Oh, what page is that on?
Page 3, huh? Chicks?
You said a rooster and a hen, but you didn't reply to a chick.
Well, at that point.
They're kind of like old, they're not differentiated yet until they're like a year old.
Page 3 would have a definition of
In
a
the pink.
chicken. The pink there. So, I don't know, but hopefully that meets the definition of a chicken. I don't know.
We need to, and we need to have roosters too,
Oh, no, we do, it's,
being they're killing off 100 million chickens.
you know what, we better get right on this chickens for eggs thing.
That's right.
If people get right at it, and get the word out, we're gonna fix it, but go ahead and get your chickens, pick them out and get eggs.
That's right.
Page 4, I added a definition of developable area. We have that as a requirement, like in our campground districts, that they are allowed so many units per developable acre. That was just to add some clarity of what is being subtracted out for developable area. Added a couple definitions on page 6. Manure management, because we were kind of referencing last month that we wanted people with like a couple animal units to start thinking about manure. So I kind of added some language in there about just if you're over 2, contact conservation staff to discuss what you have to do with your manure. Added definition of navigable water, referring to that from the state definition. Added definitions for non-metallic mineral, non-metallic mining. Since we're talking about that a little bit. Page 7, quarries. I tweaked that definition a little bit to say that metallic mining is not a quarry in our definition. Because metallic mining has a whole different set of regulations at the state. We always deal with non-metallic mining, which is gravel, sand, that type of stuff, so.
So far, no one's found any valuable metal.
Yeah, we don't have any diamonds or anything yet, or anything that I'm aware of.
No gold mines
Yeah.
in Burnett County?
No.
You know, I once saw a place that there could be diamonds, but here there's, 500 feet of groundwater above it. Above that bedrock.
Yeah.
So it's probably not.
I added a definition of resort. I know there was kind of a discussion last month where we were kind of talking what's a definition of a resort versus a campground, so I thought I would try to clean up that definition a little bit. Basically saying this does not include a campground, so they are slightly different. Definition of a rooming house, definition on the next page of a tourist house. Those are already words that are in our ordinance. In other locations, I'm still waiting, page 9, still waiting on Wanda to get me the new ordinance resolution numbers for amending the comp plan. Page 11. So this is the RR 1, 2, and 3 districts. So, we were kind of talking about solar a little bit, so I thought, well, do we wanna, and again, if you guys don't want this language in there, I don't, we can adjust it or whatever. I thought, well, cause we're talking about what's kind of like a personal solar system versus a, commercial type solar system, so I kind of did a little research online. It seems like most of your residential systems, they say, are under 10 kilowatts. And then when I looked into the size, that blue line there, it just says takes about 600 square feet of space. So you can kind of visualize that's what like a personal type solar system. Yeah, or ground mounted one that's, not very huge. So I was just added some clarity there. I know number 7, line 11 there, we were talking about, can we get some language in there to notify the people to contact the townships about if they have to do that licensing through the township or that room tax. So I added some clarity there. Section number 8. So we were talking about chickens, and then what do we do about conforming versus non-conforming and parcel sizes? So then I thought, okay, up to 10 chickens are allowed on parcels, any parcel less than 5 acres. And then section 9, on those parcels that are 5 acre or larger, they can have up to 5 animal units. So it doesn't matter if you're RR1, 2, or 3, if your parcel's 5 acres in size. So if I own the 40 out in the middle of nowhere and it's zoned RR1, I can have my 5 animal units. I don't care that my parcel's. Yes, trying to clean up that language. And I added the note in there about once you're over 2, contact conservation to talk about poop. Line 34 there. Livestock, I put in there up to a maximum of 20 animal units. So again, this is a CUP. So if they want to go over that 5 animal units, or they want to do more than the 10 chickens and they're on a small parcel, then they'd have to get a CUP, and they could ask for up to 20 animal units.
But what about roosters? People wanna rotate their stock, cause once chickens get to be so old, if they're doing eggs, you're gonna want a rooster around to be able to have more chickens.
Yeah, that's an issue. You guys gotta determine what size parcel do you want roosters on?
One thing we even did that was it was a state law proposed. Statewide, about you could have 10 chickens but no roosters, so that's why we did that. Because that would look like that might be gonna be the law, And it only becomes if some people get annoyed if you got a bunch of roosters crowing, But I'm inclined to think the intent is to have hens. And a lot of people just buy their chickens that don't have any clucky hens.
Right.
But I don't think we're gonna worry if a person has a rooster, or chase them around for that, but I think.
Well, I will get a call though.
Right.
On some of these lake lots. So I need some guidance on what you guys want.
Well, I'm just looking at the fact they're killing off 100 million chickens. There's gonna be, chicken in the stores is gonna go way up, eggs are going up. People are gonna try to be self-preserved, to have their own chickens and maybe rotate their stock. They're gonna probably wanna do something.
I think you're right, there will be. This is just trying to. Come up with a standard. If somebody has basically call the person up and say, got a complaint on your rooster, But I hate to be that detailed, You can have one rooster if you're raising chickens, but you can't have 10 roosters.
Right, well, they should be able to have at least a rooster anyways, if they're trying to raise chickens and stuff like
You could
that.
say no more than one rooster.
Or can we modify it if he starts to get complaints? Because if no one complains,
I-
and if you start to get complaints.
My
then we
gut
really
feeling
look
is
at-
let's just try it, and then if we get people with a problem, we can fix it, you know.
Yeah, and you can always amend the ordinance again, so I mean, granted, and chickens don't live forever, so the non-conforming use will die off eventually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Rooster, it used to raise meat. It took a long time to I.
Right.
Yeah, I did have a complaint, I got a bunch of meat chickens, and the roosters all started growing in late summer. That plus, and it was weird, because why, it's right, why would that bother you, but it's right across the road from a bunch of developed lake lots. So, yeah, it happens. And sometimes it happens, it's nothing to do with crowing, but some other reason. you
Well, they
know.
people drag zoning into to get back at neighbors that are having a dispute about.
We're not gonna go out and search roosters.
As I have said, when I lived in the city of Dallas, Texas, hearing roosters crowing at sunrise in the background was kind of, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, lots of
But-
country kids like that.
But I didn't have it right next door, so my opinion could have changed in that
Yeah,
regard.
I'd be inclined to say our intent is for this to be to accommodate things. And we're not checking what your chickens are, you know,
Right.
but kind of policy wise.
You know, and some people are, you know, raising chickens for meat and stuff like that, and all kinds of different kinds of chickens.
My,
for different things.
My daughter and son-in-law do that, and they're on like a 2.5 acre lot over in Minnesota. It's zoned and all that, it's no issue there. And but those chickens, those meat chickens get big so fast that they get them in April, and then by June, we're done with them, you know, so. You don't ever get around to crowing, right? And they do about 40 or 50 at a time. But that, we would want, if you were on that size lot here, you want a CUP to do that. And all we'd want to do is make sure you got some separation from, you know, not right up next to the neighbor's kid picture we're doing.
Bedroom window or something,
Right.
So what do you want me to do? One rooster, no roosters, 50 roosters?
10 chickens.
Okay.
No roosters, somebody has smuggles a rooster and we don't care.
Well, yeah,
Don't go with that. Try to make it as simple to people, vast majority of people, if somebody calls and asks me, if I have a rooster so I can get some. Eggs to set, I would say, just don't let us see it.
most people, I'm gonna say, just don't, I'm gonna pretend like I didn't hear you call me, don't tell me, and just go on with life. So,
Right, it's not intended to, it's intended to not have somebody have a bunch of pet roosters all crowing in the morning. That, you know, that harvest. It's because you're out in a bigger piece of land, you can run it. I found it. I'm gonna fall into that 5 acres of west.
and if I get a bunch of complaints about it, we'll bring it back to the committee and
Yeah.
you guys can
Yeah, there are.
decide what to do.
You know, who used to live for me, and I haven't ever killed a chicken, we were all pets. So she, of course, had roosters. Roosters. But she was friendly.
As a practical matter, would you recommend that people borrow a rooster or have a rooster as a short-term guest and then?
Yeah, that would be another. They're exempt, those roosters are exempt as itinerant.
Well, then are they a boarding facility? Then do they need a CUP then or something?
Now, let's try to keep this as simple as we can.
Yes, I agree.
If they have a rooster and they're gonna breed to have setting so that they're gonna think about the fact that it's gonna take a lot more work, but. You know.
I think that's a fairly narrow. Somebody with 5 acres wanting to do that's probably pretty rare. So.
You know, when I say, you know, not that I wanna beat a dead chicken to death, says no roosters and no guinea fowl on parcels less than 5 acres. Do you wanna make that a smaller number?
No, let's leave it.
Okay,
Again, somebody at just a half an acre may not gonna do this.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But I think it's mostly the sort of people that like to garden and, you know, have some
Yep.
other stuff, sort of a population that we can trust to know what they're doing.
All right, page 12, I added again, tried to clarify the solar system, personal use is a permitted use. What are we in? Oh, these are in those RR 4, 5, and 6 districts. Again, if they're doing a short-term rental, added that language. Talked about manure, up to a maximum of 20 animal units. Page 14, I'm gonna fix that and remove that CUP requirement, because that's exclusive ag. Citing will still apply though. Page 16. That needs to go away, right? Is that exclusive ag? Yeah, so that needs to go away, item 5, line 10. Cause there is no cap on animal units in exclusive ag.
So it's not, it shouldn't follow the conditional
Yep.
use at all.
Yep. Okay, I'll fix that. Page 18, I don't know, that blue note in there, I still don't know where I'm supposed to mail this notice to DATCP. But I'll figure that out some year. Page 19. So this is A2. That section there I had in gray, that was me kind of asking, do we want to change animal units? You just said we're not gonna do that, so I'll fix that or put that back to what it was. Again, talked about solar size, short-term rental licensing. So line 29, I'm gonna say no more than 500 animal units. Cause that's an A2, that would be the cap. Cause it's not like exclusive ag, it's not unlimited.
Right.
Be capped at 500. Page 20. Yeah, those things are fine to remove. Page 30 or line 34 there, I'm gonna unstrike the quarry thing, so that'll go back in there. Page 21, that would still. Yeah, so page 21, I would keep that line striked. Then let's see, page 22, that's the A4 district. That's gonna be up to a maximum of 500 animal units, so that's right. Same thing, line 28, that would be right, with it being 500. Page 23. I added the word non-metallic mining, that's what we consider quarrying, I'll clarify that. Page 24. Again, a permitted use that they can have. Let's see here, where am I section? So A4, this is, I added a section about needing a CUP on solar and wind that's greater than 10 kilowatts. So again, that's greater than a personal size system. Once you get more over 10, then you're starting to produce energy for others.
Right.
Yep.
And then all the way up to 1 megawatt where the county's authority is replaced by the Public Service Commission.
Is it one, it might be higher than that, but yeah, there is some some range in there where then once you hit a certain number, then counties can't even weigh in, then it's the Public Service Commission.
Do you have that thing language in the
It's an A4 and it's gonna be an A5.
Maybe that could be a tool as well. I get the thought, I mean, I'm not saying.
Yeah, it's up to you guys.
I think in one, the size 14 acres, the other size of the one in that never happened with
But that wasn't a forestry district. That wasn't even in A2. Yeah.
the. You know, it's pretty hard to deny them looking at the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And by having a CUP, it just would allow us to go completely agreements. But they're about as hard to deny as large scale lifestyle. You know, state has passed specific regulations.
I can add this to A2.
Let's do that.
I mean, it gives more flexibility.
More opportunity.
Yeah.
We probably have more A2 zone land than any other single district.
That is, it is the biggest district as far as area, yes.
But by doing the CUP, then we can make sure there's a separation of room.
Yep. Let's see, page 25, that's just a note to me. Page 26, this is that new A5 district. Up to a maximum of 500 animal units.
That's what we want to have, insert that more than 250 subject to chapter 18.
Yep, yep, subject to citing. I again added the permitted use is the personal size solar up to 10 kilowatts. No more than 500 animal units. And then on the conditional uses on page 28, I added, this is where we said we wanted quarrying basically to be added as a conditional use in the A5, so I added that section, then I added that solar again over 10 kilowatts. Added that as a CUP there as well. $29. This one, line 22, 23. I looked at like a typical solar sizing for a like commercial facility. So like envision like a Walmart being built and them having a bunch of solar panels, you know, on the roof or something. So I kind of, or like even like a Four Winds, you know, big grocery store building that would want to do some. So I added that permitted use could be up to 100 kilowatt per parcel. And then that's about 6,500 square feet. So, you know, I mean,
a big building or a big facility.
Yeah.
Warranted.
Yep. No.
No reason to make it so small. We would.
Yeah, because they're gonna want enough energy to, you know, run their facility.
Yeah, and it's probably something that probably should encourage. We don't, not like we have oil or anything to burn.
Yep. So I figured I'd add a little bit of kind of flexibility there. Page 31, added the word non-metallic after quarrying. Page 32. So this is in the forestry, F1 district. Again, talked about a personal size solar up to 10 kilowatt. Added language about the, if they're renting, contact their town. This, line 15, I struck the word, the comma and the word plants. So that new line then would say in F1, the conditional use is dams for the production of electrical power in flowage areas. So I think that was, we had confusion before where the Webb Lake one, people were saying, well, why are you allowing a CUP for solar when it's not a dam? And I said, well, power generation doesn't mean it has to be a dam. And that's really what it always meant in the past. Forestry was a hydro dam. Yeah.
And the plants were just because Northwestern had a diesel generator plant still do it, that they use in case the grid goes down and they have to supply.
Yep.
They don't use them very often because it's cheaper to buy it than.
Line 24 added the word non-metallic, the end of the page there added again, if you're over 2 animal units, talk the land conservation. And then on the next page 33, I did add Again, if you're solar or wind greater than 10 kilowatts, then it's a CUP. F2, this is that new district I added, so a 40-acre forestry essentially. Again, allowing personal size solar. If you're renting, contact Land and Water. This one I did add so I fixed the plants for production of power, so again, it refers back to dams. This one I did add the campgrounds. Cause right now you can ask for a CUP for a campground in F1, that's the up to 25 unit one, so I thought might as well have that in F2 as well. Yep. And then I added, this is where I must have dozed off on the first run and forgot to add some of the CUP items. So I added like F1 has recreation, youth camps, riding stables, shooting ranges, quarrying and non-metallic mining, airports. So I put those in there similar to F1. And then again, added the solar. If you're over 10 kilowatts, then you can apply for a CUP. Page 35, again, fix that dam language. That's fun. And then quarrying and non-metallic mining, fix that. Page 38, I added the A5 and the F2 to the farmland preservation districts. Page 42, I gotta adjust that table to get all the new districts in there. Once we get ready to do that. That's it. So I'll make those changes that we discussed today. So then do you want to have a public hearing on this? It's already February, so.
I think let's make those corrections and run it out there. Repeat that anything that like the moving non-metallic lines out of it too, that could advocate for that.
Yep, yeah, I'll fix that. I'll change everything that we discussed today. Yep.
That's the only one I can see. Most everything else is accommodating requests that we have from towns and stuff. But before we do anything like changing, moving anything from the district significant, we better have our ducks lined up. And you're ready to do that yet.
So I would notice that for, well, I guess that kind of goes back to the other one today too. So you want me to renotice that public hearing for Camp Croy for March? I have time to do that yet. So would you want this on March as well? I've already put the public hearing notice out for March for the standard items, because we now do that about 6 weeks early, so the townships get a chance to review on all that.
For the continuance that we announced today,
Correct, because the township's already aware of that. Now, this one though, do you want to do this in April? Then the townships would have their normal 6 weeks to look at things. Yep.
Make them aware of what we're talking about.
Yep.
And towns will have to meet on board members at
But they'll have, that'll be the same day as our meeting, is always the election, right, in April? First Tuesday of the month? Is that election day?
April 1st, where it's election day.
So your new
But
town
the
board
new-
members would not have a say in this.
Saying it, but the existing town board would have.
Yes.
Do it.
Yep.
And we want to hope that the new candidates, some of them are running opposed.
Yep.
So some of them would.
Well, and if they're running, you would hope they're paying attention to what's coming.
Right.
Yep.
Opinion, we can express it.
Yep. Okay, so I'll notice that for a public hearing then for April 1st. On those changes. That should be take care of that section.
And it's gonna be, we're still gonna be chipping away at this. I think this is our first priority, but we talked a little bit about if we wanna acquire storage facilities or you know, renewable solar could be in industrial district.
That's what you were referencing.
But if you look at my wording in here, I think I kind of word that though.
You say storage and generation?
Yes.
Right, this is just storage, no generation.
Mm.
That was a recommendation. Brent has the article handy. That's something that people are afraid of because it's like, you know, it's like a giant battery. And if it gets a fire or something going in it, it's not easy to deal with.
I think that happened not too long ago in California, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm aware of one in New York. Could be California as
Oh,
well.
well, that could be. But anyway, they just had to let it burn itself out.
Yeah,
It's my,
and I don't know, I'd want that going on, you know, across from the street from me. But there may be some storage of the smaller type of facilities that we're talking about. And we're talking about a big one, bringing power in from multiple sources and storing. That probably, and that's viewed, I think, in that article as not being exempted by the state as the others. I've read it before, but that's not for today really, but I mean, it's one of the things that we. Looking at.
So right now, the wording I propose, I say solar and wind energy systems greater than, which includes the equipment associated with the facilities to convert and then store or transfer the energy from the solar or wind into usable form. So right now I have that as the proposed CUP language.
But that's with a generation and storage. So
Correct.
not strictly storage.
Okay.
Strictly storage would mean there's a bunch of generating facilities. Now, the one in Webb Lake wouldn't have stored because its demand would have been daylight hours.
Yeah.
They felt, but one like that, a small one in Webb Lake that did store a little would be relatively small compared to one storing a megawatt worth.
Yeah.
And if the generation is here with a megawatt of storage, it's over here someplace, that probably so separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's what we're getting at here.
And this is a CUP, so if it ever, we'd have a kick at it if it is a big facility and its storage would be big.
Well, here's the other side.
Yeah.
If it's a megawatt or more, Public Service Commission takes over and
Yeah.
the county would ease its way out.
Yeah.
And the stuff we were discussing, some counties are providing for that so they can participate in that Public Service Commission hearing. But we don't get to decide. But if that, 2 megawatt facility was gonna store power somewhere, where would that be and how would you want that zoned? I think is a legitimate concern, whether we're gonna see it when that big ever here. Because that's a huge thing, it's thousands of acres usually.
Well, Polk has that one, the proposal one, and the Polk is St. Croix, that's a 5,000 acre solar
Yeah.
system.
It's not like across the river, like that's what I think it's right.
Somewhere, it's not very far from here.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, by the Quick Trip.
By the Quick Trip?
Anyway, that's just one more thing to be wary of. I don't think we have to do that.
did you say 5,000 acres?
Yeah.
Is that government owned land or?
No, it's-
Farmers, they're buying out farmers or leasing farmland.
Really? Oof. Oh,
Yeah, these are big facilities, some of these are.
Well, it would be set nine sections,
Mm-hmm.
right?
hmm.
Fourth of a town.
Mm-hmm.
And they have beautiful farmland down
We could usually put it on less productive farmland, but then it's put in the rocks. Yeah, lots of sands, right? It's weird. Anyway, that's just one more thing to be on the radar. That's the way I would put it.
Onto my reports then.
Yep.
All right, so my reports are in the packet there. It's pretty much the summary, staff has what they've been doing. summary of essentially what happened in 2024 is in there. There's a budget report showing at the end of 2024. I put some notes on there about revenue, a few different line items. So yeah, if you look at the last page of that budget report, a lot of money's going back to the general fund. As our revenue and grant money exceeded, what we budgeted, and yeah.
The numbers are getting back up like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're approaching 300 senators. And my advice is always to look at that. as a pretty good indicator of-
Yeah. And I don't think it's gonna slow down, we're getting lots of phone calls and already people submitting plans for stuff they're looking at doing this spring, and so. Say anything?
You're not gonna have a tariff for Canada, Canadian wood, so people would be.
Mhm. At least for another 30 days, right,
For 30
or something,
days,
yeah,
That's probably not gonna.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Now, the unfortunate thing dropped, I think as we continue to have discussions on, conditions for conditional uses and things. If I want the discussion to continue to happen, because we're providing the direction and potential need for funding to oversee conditions, whatever, so I don't wanna see that drop off.
Okay.
The discussion.
We have a really good tutorial today about all that. And that's not what we. Next thing that we might first write in that. Nothing further. We're making a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Chuck, want to say something?
I'll second it.
Motive, favor, aye. Aye.
I don't get paid.